Rain hammered the cathedral windows as billionaire crime lord Kyle Serrano kissed his arranged bride for the first time. Then she whispered 6 trembling words that would ignite a war. Please don't hurt me like he did. Beneath her diamond veil, Celine Vale carried bruises from 4 years of torture by the man watching from the front row, celebrated philanthropist Lucien Varela, who owned her like property. Tonight, Kyle Serrano would learn that some debts are paid in blood. This is their story of violence, survival, and the war that changed everything. Stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The rain came down in sheets that October night, turning the city streets into rivers of black glass that reflected nothing but darkness. Inside the cathedral, 200 guests pretended this was a normal wedding. They smiled, they applauded, they drank expensive champagne and whispered about how beautiful the bride looked, how powerful the groom was, how perfect this merger would be for both families. They had no idea they were watching the beginning of a war. Kyle Serrano stood at the altar in a suit that cost $40,000, custom tailored in Milan, black as a funeral shroud. At 35, he looked like what he was, a predator in expensive clothes. 6'2", lean muscle under that tailored fabric, dark hair slicked back, jaw carved from granite. His eyes were the color of gunmetal, cold and calculating, the kind of eyes that never forgot a face or a debt. Those eyes had watched men die, had ordered deaths, had built an empire on violence and fear. The Serrano Syndicate controlled this city the way a spider controls its web. Shipping routes through the harbor where containers full of weapons moved like ghosts through customs. Underground gambling dens where fortunes changed hands every night. Money laundering operations disguised as legitimate businesses. Restaurants, nightclubs, car dealerships, real estate firms. Politicians who smiled for the cameras and took orders from Kyle, and back rooms where the walls didn't have ears. Judges who owed him favors. Cops who looked the other way. Kyle's father had built the foundation. Kyle had turned it into an empire, and tonight was supposed to be simple. A business transaction dressed up in white silk and roses. The Vale family needed money. The Serrano family needed legitimacy. Marriage solved both problems. Clean, efficient, emotionless. Then she walked down that aisle. Celine Vale moved like a ghost in her ivory gown, each step measured and careful, like she was walking on broken glass. The dress was a masterpiece. French lace, hand-stitched pearls, a train that whispered against the marble floor. Her dark hair was swept up under a diamond-encrusted veil that probably cost more than a house in the suburbs. She looked like every man's dream, like a princess from a fairy tale. But Kyle Serrano noticed everything. He noticed the way her hands trembled when she took the bouquet from her bridesmaid. Noticed how her shoulders were too rigid, her spine too straight, like she was bracing for impact. Noticed the makeup that was just a shade too heavy around her left eye, the foundation just a bit too thick along her jawline. And when her father walked her down that aisle, Kyle noticed the way Marcus Vale's hand gripped his daughter's arm. Too tight, controlling. The old man's eyes were desperate, greedy, the look of a gambler who'd finally drawn a winning hand after years of losses. Celine reached the altar. Her father released her like he was handing over merchandise. Kyle took her hand. It was ice cold. The ceremony blurred, words about love and honor and forever, all of it meaningless ritual. Kyle spoke his vows without feeling them. Celine spoke hers in a voice so soft the guests had to lean forward to hear. Then came the kiss. The priest nodded. The crowd held its breath. Kyle lifted the veil, and for the first time he really looked at his wife's face. She was beautiful. 28 years old, high cheekbones, full lips painted crimson, eyes the color of smoke. But those eyes, Christ, those eyes were dead. Hollow, like someone had scooped out everything that made her human and left behind a perfect shell. Kyle leaned in. His lips brushed hers, barely a touch, nothing romantic about it. That's when she whispered it, 6 words, barely audible, her breath hot against his mouth. Please don't hurt me like he did. The words hit Kyle like a shotgun blast to the chest. He pulled back just enough to look at her. Her eyes were squeezed shut, tears leaking from the corners, her whole body rigid with terror. She was waiting for the pain, expecting it. The crowd erupted in applause. Rice flew through the air. Someone shouted congratulations. The organ thundered into the recessional march. But Kyle couldn't move. Couldn't think past those 6 words echoing in his skull. Like he did. Like he did. Like he did. Who? Celine's eyes opened. She looked at him with the expression of a prisoner who just realized the bars were thicker than she thought. Smile, she whispered. They're watching. So Kael smiled. He took her hand and led her back down that aisle, while cameras flashed and guests cheered. He smiled through the receiving line where strangers pumped his hand and told him how lucky he was. He smiled during the limousine ride to the reception hall, where 1,000 candles turned the ballroom into a golden cage. But inside, something dark and furious was waking up. Someone had hurt his wife, and Kael Serrano was very, very good at hurting people back. The reception hall was obscene in its luxury. Crystal chandeliers the size of cars, tables draped in silk, champagne fountains, a 10-tier cake that looked like architecture, the kind of party where the flowers alone cost 50 grand and nobody blinked. Kael sat at the head table with Celine beside him, watching the crowd. Politicians glad-handing mobsters, business rivals pretending to be friends, women in designer gowns that cost more than cars, men in tuxedos that hid shoulder holsters. This was his world. These were his people. But Kael wasn't watching them. He was watching his wife. Celine sat perfectly still, barely touching her food. She smiled when required, nodded at the right moments, played the role of blushing bride with mechanical precision, but her hands never stopped shaking. You should eat, Kael said quietly. Long night ahead. She flinched at his voice. Actually flinched, like his words were a physical blow. I'm not hungry, she said. Her voice was flat, empty. But thank you. Thank you. Like he was a stranger. Like they hadn't just promised to spend their lives together. Kael's jaw tightened. Who hurt you? Celine's fork clattered against her plate. She didn't look at him. I don't know what you mean. The bruises under your makeup, the way you flinch every time someone moves too fast. The fact that you just begged me not to hurt you like he did. Kael's voice was low, dangerous. So I'll ask again. Who hurt you? Celine's breathing went shallow, her fingers twisted in her lap, knuckles white. It doesn't matter, she whispered. It's done. It's over. It matters to me. Why? She finally looked at him, and there was something fierce in her dead eyes now, something bitter and broken. You don't know me. I don't know you. This is a business arrangement, my father's debts for your family's reputation. That's all this is. Kael leaned closer, close enough that only she could hear. Maybe, but you're my wife now, and nobody touches what belongs to me. Ever. Celine laughed. It was a horrible sound, sharp and cracked. I've belonged to men my whole life. You're just the latest owner. Before Kael could respond, someone tapped a knife against a champagne glass. The sharp ringing silenced the room. Speech, someone shouted. Let's hear from the groom. Kael stood, buttoned his jacket, smiled that predator's smile that made weak men nervous. Thank you all for coming, he said. His voice carried across the ballroom without effort, commanding attention. Tonight we celebrate not just a marriage, but a partnership. 2 families united, 2 futures merged. The crowd applauded. Kael kept talking, saying all the right things about honor and tradition and legacy. But his eyes were scanning the room, looking for someone who didn't fit, someone watching Celine the wrong way. And then he found him, back corner table, half hidden in shadows. A man in his 50s, silver hair, tailored tuxedo, champagne glass in hand. Handsome in that aristocratic way, sharp nose, thin lips, cold blue eyes. He wasn't watching Kael, wasn't watching the crowd. He was watching Celine. And the look on his face, Christ, the look on his face was possession, ownership. The way a man looks at property he's not quite ready to let go. Celine had gone rigid in her chair. She wasn't looking at the man, but Kael could see the terror bleeding through her perfect composure. See the way her breathing had gone shallow and fast. She knew he was there. She was terrified he was there. Kael finished his speech, raised his glass. The crowd drank. Then he leaned down and whispered in Celine's ear. Who is that? Back corner, silver hair. Celine's champagne glass slipped from her fingers. It shattered against the table, liquid and glass exploding across white silk. The man in the corner smiled. "That's Lucienne Varela," Celine whispered. Her voice was breaking apart. "And you need to stay away from him. You need to—" Lucienne Varela stood. He was walking toward them. Celine made a sound like a wounded animal. She tried to stand, tried to run, but Kael caught her wrist. "Stay," he said quietly. "I've got you." Lucienne reached the heat table. Up close, he was even more polished. Expensive cologne, manicured nails, a smile that belonged on magazine covers. He looked like money and culture and refinement. He looked like the kind of man who donated to children's hospitals. "Congratulations," Lucian said smoothly. He extended a hand to Kael. "Lucienne Varela, art dealer, philanthropist, old friend of the Vale family." Kael took the hand, squeezed just hard enough to make a point. "Kael Serrano. Oh, I know who you are." Lucien's smile widened. "Everyone knows who you are." He turned to Celine. "And Celine, you look absolutely radiant. Marriage suits you." Celine couldn't speak. She was frozen, trapped between two predators, her face drained of color. Kael felt something cold and violent settle in his chest. He knew that look in Lucian's eyes, had seen it before in men who hurt women for pleasure, men who got off on fear and control. "Thank you for coming," Kael said. His voice was silk over razors. "I'm sure Celine appreciates your support." "We go way back," Lucian said. He reached out, touched Celine's shoulder. Just a brief touch, casual, innocent. Celine made that wounded sound again, and Kael saw it. When Lucian's fingers brushed Celine's bare shoulder, the makeup shifted, just for a second, just enough. Bruises. Finger-shaped bruises. Dark purple against pale skin. Fresh. Recent. Maybe a day old. Lucienne saw Kael notice, saw the recognition in his eyes, and the bastard smiled wider. "I should let you two enjoy your evening," Lucienne said. He squeezed Celine's shoulder once, hard enough to make her gasp. "Congratulations again. I'm sure you'll be very happy together." He walked away, disappearing into the crowd like smoke. Celine was shaking so hard her teeth were chattering. "He's going to kill me," she whispered. "Oh God, he's going to kill me." Kael stood, buttoned his jacket, bent down and scooped Celine out of her chair like she weighed nothing. "We're leaving," he told his security chief, a mountain of muscle named Torres, who materialized at his shoulder. "Now!" "Sir, the reception isn't—" "I don't give a fuck. Clear a path to the car." Torres knew better than to argue. He and 3 other guards surrounded Kael as he carried Celine through the ballroom. Guests stared, whispered, cameras flashed. Kael didn't care. The limousine was waiting outside, engine running, rain still hammering down. Kael climbed in with Celine in his arms, and Torres slammed the door behind them. "Drive," Kael told the driver. "The penthouse. Don't stop for anything." The car pulled away from the curb, tires hissing on wet pavement. Inside, Celine was sobbing now. Not delicate tears. Harsh, ugly crying that came from somewhere deep and broken. Kael held her. Didn't say anything. Just held her while she fell apart in her wedding dress, mascara running down her face, her whole body shaking with terror and relief and grief all mixed together. "I'm sorry," she gasped between sobs. "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm—" "Stop." Kael's voice was gentle but firm. "You have nothing to apologize for. You don't understand. He'll come for me. He always comes for me. And now you're involved, and he'll hurt you too, and—" "Celine." Kael caught her face in his hands, forced her to look at him. "I need you to listen to me very carefully. I am Kael fucking Serrano. I run this city. I've killed more men than you've met in your entire life, and that piece of shit philanthropist doesn't scare me even a little bit." Celine stared at him like he'd just spoken a foreign language. "Now," Kael continued, "we're going to go to my penthouse. You're going to tell me everything, every detail, every name, everything that bastard did to you, and then I'm going to make him wish he'd never been born." "You can't," Celine whispered. "He's too powerful. He has connections, money, influence." Kael laughed. It was a dark, dangerous sound. "Sweetheart, so do I. The difference is I'm not pretending to be a good man." The limousine pulled up to a sleek glass tower in the financial district. Kael's building. 40 stories of steel and money and power. They rode the private elevator to the penthouse in silence. Celine had stopped crying, but she looked like a ghost, pale, hollow-eyed, barely there. The elevator doors opened directly into Kael's home. It was exactly what you'd expect from a criminal kingpin with too much money. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Modern furniture that cost more than most people's annual salaries. Art on the walls that belonged in museums. A bar that could stock a nightclub. Everything black and white and chrome, cold and sharp and precise. Celine stood in the middle of the living room, still in her wedding dress, looking lost. "Drink?" Kael asked, heading to the bar. "I don't—" It wasn't a question. He poured 2 glasses of scotch, expensive stuff that burned smooth, handed her one. "Drink, then talk." Celine took the glass with shaking hands, drank, coughed, drank again. Kael waited. He was good at waiting. Patience was a predator's virtue. Finally, Celine spoke. "My father used to have money," she said quietly. "Old money. Vale fortune. Generations of it. But he gambled, constantly. Sports, cards, horses, anything with odds. Lost millions, then tens of millions, then everything." She took another drink. 4 years ago, he was into some very bad people for $30 million. The kind of people who don't negotiate, who don't accept payment plans, the kind who would have killed him and dumped his body in the harbor. Kael knew those people. Some of them worked for him. "Lucien Varela paid the debt," Celine continued. Her voice was getting harder now, bitter. "All 30 million. Wrote a check like it was nothing. My father was so grateful. Called Lucien his savior, his guardian angel." "There was a condition," Kael said. "It wasn't a question. Me." Celine looked at him with those dead eyes. "I was the condition. Lucien wanted me. And my father who was supposed to protect me, who was supposed to love me, he said yes. He sold me for $30 million and never looked back." Kael's hands tightened around his glass. He wanted to break something, wanted to find Marcus Vale and throw him off this fucking building. "At first, Lucien was charming," Celine said. "Flowers, gifts, dinners at expensive restaurants. He told me I was beautiful, told me he loved me. I was 24, scared, and I wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe this could work." She laughed that horrible laugh again. "Then he showed me who he really was. The first time I disagreed with him about something, I can't even remember what, he backhanded me across the face, broke my cheekbone. Then he cried, apologized, said he'd never do it again. Bought me a diamond necklace worth $200,000. Kael felt something cold and murderous settling in his bones. It got worse. He controlled everything. What I wore, where I went, who I talked to, he isolated me from everyone. My friends stopped calling. My family, her voice cracked. My family knew. They knew what he was doing to me, and they didn't care. Because Lucien kept paying, kept throwing money at my father's debts, and I was the price. She drained her scotch, set the glass down with a sharp crack. He beat me, regularly, for 4 years. Sometimes for real reasons. If I spoke wrong, looked at someone wrong, breathed wrong. Sometimes for no reason at all. Just because he could. Because I belonged to him and he could do whatever he wanted. Kael was going to kill Lucien Varela. Not quickly, not cleanly, slowly, painfully. Make it last days. 2 months ago, my father came to me with your proposal, Celine said. A marriage. Business arrangement. He said it would solve everything. Said Lucien had agreed to let me go, that the debt was paid, that I could have a fresh start. Lucien agreed to let you go, Kael repeated slowly. But the bruises on your shoulder are fresh, from yesterday, maybe today. Celine nodded. Last night. He came to my family's house, said he wanted to say goodbye, to give me one last gift. The gift was pain. The gift was a reminder. Celine's voice dropped to a whisper. He told me that marriage doesn't mean anything, that I'll always belong to him, that if I ever tell anyone what he did, he'll destroy me, destroy my family, make sure I suffer for the rest of my life. She looked at Kael with something like desperation. So you understand why you can't do anything, why we just have to pretend this never happened. Lucien Varela is dead, Kael said quietly. He just doesn't know it yet. Celine shook her head. You don't understand. He's not some street thug you can disappear. He's a billionaire, art mogul with connections to museums, politicians, the media. He donates millions to charity, has buildings named after him. If he dies suspiciously, people will investigate. Your name will come up. The Serrano Syndicate will... I don't care. Cale set his glass down and crossed to where Celine stood. Let me tell you something about power. Real power. It's not about money or connections or how many charity galas you attend. It's about fear. About making people understand that there are consequences for their actions. He touched her face gently, carefully, like she was made of glass. You're my wife now. Maybe this started as business. Maybe neither of us wanted this. But you're mine, and I protect what's mine. No exceptions, no negotiations. Celine was staring at him like he was speaking a language she'd forgotten existed. He hurt you, Kyle said. His voice was soft, but there was murder in it. Cold, calculated murder. He put his hands on you, left bruises, made you afraid to breathe, and then he had the balls to show up at our wedding and threaten you. He leaned closer. That ends tonight. By the end of this week, Lucien Varela will understand what it means to cross me. By the end of the month, he'll be begging me to end his suffering. And by the end of the year, he'll be a footnote, a warning, a story people tell about what happens when you touch something that belongs to Kale Serrano. A tear slid down Celine's cheek, then another. Why? She whispered. Why do you care? Kyle didn't have a good answer for that. Maybe because he'd seen his little sister suffer at the hands of a man who thought power gave him the right to hurt. Maybe because he knew what it was like to be helpless and broken. Maybe because somewhere under all the violence and blood and moral compromise, there was still a shred of humanity left in him. Or maybe he just really hated men who hurt women. Because I can, he said finally, and because nobody else will. Celine broke then. Really broke. She collapsed against his chest, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. Kyle held her, one hand on the back of her head, the other around her waist, and let her cry out 4 years of pain and terror and isolation. Outside the windows, the city glittered like a carpet of stars. Kyle's city. His empire. His kingdom of shadows and sin. And somewhere out there, Lucien Varela was going about his life, probably drinking wine in some expensive restaurant, maybe fucking a woman who was too scared to say no, definitely thinking he'd won, but he hadn't won. He'd just declared war on the wrong man. Kale's phone buzzed. He pulled it out without releasing Celine. Text from Torres. Everything okay, boss? Kale typed one-handed. Fine. Run a full background on Lucien Varela. Everything. Financial records, properties, business dealings, personal life. I want to know where he eats breakfast and what hand he jerks off with. 24 hours. Torres responded immediately. On it. Then another text. Sir, there's a problem. Marcus Vale is downstairs, says he needs to speak with you about his daughter, says it's urgent. Kyle looked down at Celine. She'd cried herself into exhaustion, barely conscious against his chest. Your father's here, he said quietly. Celine went rigid. Don't let him up, please. I can't. I won't, but I do need to have a conversation with him. Fear flashed in her eyes. He'll tell you to send me back, to Lucien. He'll say I'm lying, that I'm dramatic, that... Celine. Kale's voice was iron. Look at me. She did. Your father sold you to a monster for money, then married you off to me for legitimacy. He's a coward and a failure, and his opinion means less than nothing to me. Kale stroked her hair, surprisingly gentle. But he does owe me a debt now. You're my wife, part of my family, which means your debts are my debts. Your problems are my problems. He smiled, but it was the smile of a predator. And your enemies are my enemies. Celine's breathing slowed. Some of the terror bled out of her eyes, replaced by something that might have been hope. Go to bed, Kale told her. Down the hall, second door on the right. Lock it if you want. I'll deal with your father. What are you going to do? Have a conversation. Kyle, go. Not harsh, but firm. I've got this. Celine hesitated, then nodded. She walked down the hall, wedding dress trailing behind her like a ghost. The door clicked shut. Kale waited until he heard the lock engage. Then he texted Torres. Send him up. Alone. 2 minutes later, the elevator dinged. Marcus Vale stumbled out, drunk and desperate, still wearing his wedding tux. The old man reeked of whiskey and cigars, his face flushed and sweating. Serrano, Marcus slurred. We need to talk about. Kael's fist caught him in the stomach. Hard, professional. The kind of hit that drove all the air from a man's lungs without breaking ribs. Marcus collapsed, gasping, clawing at the floor. Kael crouched beside him, grabbed a handful of his hair, pulled his head back. Let me make something very clear, Kael said quietly. Your daughter is my wife now. Mine. Which means you have no claim on her, no rights, no say in her life. You sold those when you traded her to Lucian Varela for $30 million. I had no choice, Marcus wheezed. The debt. You always have a choice. You chose money over your daughter. You chose to stand by while a monster tortured her for 4 years. You chose to be a coward. Kael released Marcus's hair, let his head crack against the marble floor. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave this building. You're going to go back to whatever hole you crawled out of. And you're never going to contact Celine again. Not a call, not a text, not a letter. She doesn't exist to you anymore. But she's my daughter. No. Kael's voice was absolute zero. She was your daughter. Now she's my wife. And if you ever come near her again, if you ever try to contact her, if you even think about her too hard, I will personally throw you off this building and watch you bounce. He stood, straightened his jacket, looked down at Marcus like he was examining a bug. Do we understand each other? Marcus nodded frantically, blood leaking from his nose where it had hit the floor. Good. Kael hit the elevator button. Torres will escort you out. And Marcus? Tell Lucian Varela I'm coming for him. Tell him the clock is ticking. Tell him to enjoy whatever time he has left. The elevator doors opened. Torres stepped out, grabbed Marcus by the collar, dragged him inside. Make sure he leaves the building, Kael said. And make sure he knows what happens if he comes back. Torres grinned. He was very good at delivering that kind of message. The elevator doors closed. Kael stood alone in his penthouse, surrounded by luxury and silence and the ghosts of violence yet to come. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He almost ignored it. Then he saw the message. Congratulations on the marriage. She looks beautiful tonight. Almost as beautiful as she did last night when I had her. Remember, she'll always be mine. LV attached was a photo. Celine yesterday, bruised and crying in what looked like Lucian's bedroom. Kael stared at the message for a long time. Then he smiled. Not a nice smile. Not a human smile. The smile of a man who'd just been given permission to do what he did best. Destroy. He forwarded the message to Torres with 3 words. Game on, brother. Then he walked down the hall to the guest room where Celine was locked behind a door, probably crying, probably terrified, probably certain that her life was over. He knocked gently. Celine, it's me. Silence. Your father's gone. He won't bother you again. More silence. Then the lock clicked. The door opened a crack. Celine stood there in an oversized t-shirt she'd found somewhere, wedding makeup smeared down her face, looking about 16 years old and completely broken. Did you hurt him? She asked. Yes. Good. She opened the door wider. I can't sleep, she said quietly. Every time I close my eyes, I see... She stopped, swallowed. Can you stay? Just be in the room? You don't have to talk or anything. Just be there? Kael had killed men for asking less of him, but this broken woman with dead eyes who'd whispered 6 words that started a war, she could ask him anything. Yeah, he said, I can do that. He followed her into the guest room. She climbed into bed, pulled the covers up to her chin like a child afraid of monsters. Kael sat in the chair by the window watching the city lights. Thank you, Celine whispered, for listening, for believing me, for... Whoop! Sleep, Kael said. We've got work to do tomorrow. What kind of work? Kael looked at her. Rain hammered against the windows. Lightning flickered in the distance. The kind that ends with Lucian Varela wishing he'd never been born. Celine closed her eyes. For the first time in 4 years, she slept without nightmares. And in his chair by the window, Kael Serrano sat watch over his broken bride and planned the systematic destruction of the man who'd hurt her. By dawn, Lucian Varela's world would begin to crumble. He just didn't know it yet. Checking. Will end Part 1. The war has begun, but Lucien has no idea what's coming. Kael's empire is about to become a weapon aimed at one man's throat. Tomorrow, the city will wake up to find its beloved philanthropist's world starting to collapse. And Celine will have to decide: stay in the shadows or step into the light and fight back. The real violence hasn't even started yet. Dawn broke over the city like a knife wound, red and raw and bleeding across the skyline. Kael hadn't slept. He'd sat in that chair all night, watching Celine breathe in the darkness, watching the city lights flicker and die as morning came. His mind had been working, planning, calculating every move in the war he was about to start. At 6 a.m., his phone lit up with the first report from Torres. Kael read it twice, then he smiled. Lucien Varela was about to have a very bad day.
Right?
Celine woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee. For 3 seconds, she forgot where she was. Then memory crashed back: the wedding, the reception, Lucien's smile, Kael's promise, and her stomach twisted into knots. She sat up. The oversized t-shirt had twisted around her body during sleep. Her wedding dress was a crumpled mess on the floor, diamonds and lace and silk looking obscene in the morning light. The chair by the window was empty. Celine's chest tightened. Of course he'd left. Of course last night's promises had been just words. Men like Kael Serrano didn't actually. The door opened. Kael walked in carrying 2 mugs of coffee, still wearing last night's tux pants and white shirt, sleeves rolled up, collar open. He looked like he'd been awake for days. Dark circles under his eyes, jaw tight with tension. But those gunmetal eyes were sharp, focused, alive with something dangerous. "Coffee," he said, handing her a mug. "Black. I don't know how you take it." Celine took it with shaking hands. The ceramic was warm against her palms, real, solid. "You stayed," she said quietly. "I said I would." Men say a lot of things. Kael sat on the edge of the bed, close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and dark. "I'm not most men." Celine wanted to believe him. God, she wanted to believe him so badly it hurt. "What happens now?" she asked. Kael pulled out his phone, tapped the screen, handed it to her. "Read." It was a news article, time-stamped 40 minutes ago. The headline made her breath catch. Federal investigation launched into Varela art galleries, allegations of fraud, money laundering. Celine scrolled. Her hands were shaking so hard the screen blurred. Anonymous tips, suspicious financial transactions. Questions about artwork provenance. Federal agents raiding 3 gallery locations. Assets frozen pending investigation. "How did you—" She looked up at Kael. "This was overnight? You did this overnight?" "I made some calls, called in some favors, turned over some evidence I've been holding on to." Kael's voice was casual, like he was discussing the weather. "Lucien's been dirty for years. Money laundering through art sales, forging provenance documents, dealing in stolen antiquities. Everyone knew. Nobody cared because he threw enough money at the right people. And now they care. Now they're terrified. Because when the feds start digging into Lucien's finances, they're going to find connections to people who can't afford to be connected to him. Politicians, judges, business moguls, all of them scrambling to distance themselves before they get dragged down too." Celine stared at the article, at the photo of federal agents carrying boxes out of Lucien's flagship gallery, at the statement from his lawyer claiming innocence and cooperation. "This is just the beginning," Kael said. "By noon, his construction permits for that waterfront development will mysteriously disappear. By tonight, 3 major investors will pull funding from his projects. By tomorrow, someone's going to leak information about his offshore accounts. You're destroying him. I'm dismantling him, piece by piece. Everything he built, everything he owns, everything he uses to hurt people. I'm taking it apart until there's nothing left but a scared old man with no power and no protection." Celine's eyes filled with tears. She didn't know if they were relief or terror or something else entirely. "He'll know it's you," she whispered. "He'll retaliate. Let him try." Kael took the phone back, set it aside. "I've been preparing for war my entire life. Lucien Varela collects art and hurts women. He's not equipped for what's coming." Celine set her coffee down. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. I need to tell you something about Lucian, about what he... You don't have to. Yes, I do. Her voice cracked. Because if you're going to war for me, you need to know exactly what kind of monster he is. Kale waited, patient, listening. Celine took a breath that hurt her lungs. He used to record it, she said quietly. The beatings, the other things. He'd set up cameras, said he wanted to remember, wanted to be able to watch later. He has hundreds of hours of footage, of me, of other women. Kale's expression didn't change, but something dark and murderous flickered behind his eyes. There's a woman, Celine continued. Ivy Mercer. She worked at one of Lucien's galleries. He did the same things to her. Worse things. She tried to press charges 2 years ago, tried to get a restraining order. What happened? Her lawyer was paid off. The judge dismissed the case, witnesses recanted, evidence disappeared. Within a month, Ivy lost her job, her apartment, her reputation. Last I heard, she was working at a diner in Queens, barely surviving. Kale pulled out his phone, typed something. What's her full name? Ivy Mercer, but you can't... She won't talk. She's too scared. I'm not going to force her to talk. I'm going to make sure she's protected. Put some security on her. Make sure Lucien can't touch her. Celine stared at him. Why? Because that's what you do. Kael looked at her. You protect people who've been hurt by men like him. You give them a chance to fight back if they want to, and if they don't want to, you make damn sure they're safe anyway. Something in Celine's chest cracked open, something that had been frozen for 4 years. Who are you? She whispered. Kael smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. I'm the monster who kills other monsters. By 10 a.m., Kael's penthouse had turned into a war room. Torres was there with 3 other members of Kael's inner circle, men who'd killed for him, men who'd die for him. The dining table was covered in laptops, documents, photographs. A timeline of Lucien Varella's life spread across the wall like a murder board. Celine sat on the couch, wrapped in one of Kael's sweaters, watching these dangerous men plan her abuser's destruction. Construction permits denied, Torres reported, stabbing a finger at a document. The city inspector suddenly remembered some irregularities in the applications. Environmental concerns, safety violations. Everything's shut down pending review. Which will take months, another man said. Diego, 30-something, scarred face, dead eyes, Kael's enforcer. Costing him millions in contractor fees and lost revenue. His lawyer's already screaming, Torres continued, threatening lawsuits, demanding meetings with city officials. Let him scream. Kael was standing at the window, hands in his pockets, watching the city below. What about the investors? 3 pulled out this morning. 2 more are nervous. By end of day, I'd say 5 total. Make it 6. Find out who's still in and make them an offer they can't refuse. Better terms, safer investments, anything. I want Lucien's portfolio empty by Friday. Diego grinned. You're really going for the throat. I'm going for everything. Kael turned from the window. What about the offshore accounts? Still working on it, Torres said. But I've got a contact at FinCEN who owes me. Should have something by tonight. Good. Once we expose those accounts, we leak it to the press. Let the IRS and FBI fight over who gets to prosecute him first. Selena watched this unfold with a kind of numb fascination. These men were talking about destroying a billionaire's empire like they were planning a grocery run. Casual, efficient, no hesitation. There's a problem, Diego said. He slid a photograph across the table. Lucien knows you're behind this. The photo showed Lucien leaving his lawyer's office that morning. He looked furious, his face twisted with rage. But there was something else in his expression, recognition, understanding. He sent you a message, Diego continued. He pulled out another phone, played a video. Lucien's face filled the screen. He was smiling that aristocratic smile, sitting in what looked like his home office, expensive art on the walls behind him. Kael Serrano, Lucien said smoothly. I have to admit I'm impressed. The federal investigation, the permits, the investors, all very clever, very aggressive. You're making your territory clear. He leaned forward. But you made a mistake. You think Celine is yours now. You think marriage means protection. You think I'll just walk away from 4 years of investment. Lucien's smile widened. Let me tell you a story. When I was young, my father taught me how to break horses. You don't use force, you use patience, pressure. You break their spirit slowly, methodically, until they understand that resistance is pointless, that obedience is the only option. He picked up a glass of wine, swirled it. Celine is my horse, Kyle. I've spent 4 years breaking her, training her, teaching her that she belongs to me. And you're just a stable she's visiting. Eventually, she'll come back to where she belongs, because that's what broken things do. The video ended. Silence filled the penthouse. Then Celine stood up, walked to the laptop, replayed the video, watched Lucian's face, his smile, his absolute confidence that he owned her. And something inside her snapped, not broke. Snapped, like a rope pulled too tight, finally giving way. "I want to testify," she said. Everyone turned to look at her. "What?" Kale said. "I want to testify. Against him. In court. I want to tell everyone what he did, show them the bruises, the scars, the evidence. I want to destroy him the right way." "Celine, that's—" Kyle moved toward her. "That's going to be brutal. His lawyers will tear you apart. They'll question everything, your credibility, your motives, your mental state. They'll make you relive every horrible thing he did, in public, in front of cameras. I know. They'll call you a liar, a gold digger. They'll say you're doing this for money or revenge or because I told you to. I know. The media will destroy you. Your name, your face, your life, all of it will be public record forever." "I know!" Celine's voice cracked like a whip. "I know all of that, but I also know that if I don't do this, if I just let you destroy him in the shadows, I'll never be free. I'll always be the victim, the broken horse he talks about, the thing he owned." She was shaking, but her voice was steady. "I need to face him, in court, under oath, and I need to watch him lie and squirm and realize that I'm not broken anymore." Kale studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Okay, we'll do it your way, but we do it smart. We build an airtight case, get other victims to testify, document everything. Make sure when we walk into that courtroom, we have so much evidence that his lawyers can't spin their way out of it." "Ivy," Celine said, "we need to find Ivy Mercer. If she testifies too, if it's not just me—" "Already on it," Torres said. He was typing on his laptop. "Found her. She's working at a diner in Queens, the Morning Glory on 42nd. Want me to send someone?" "No," Celine said. "I'll go. She won't trust a stranger, but she might trust another survivor." "Not alone," Kyle said immediately. "Torres, Diego, you go with her. Full security detail. Lucian knows where this is heading. He's going to try to stop it. Basic." The Morning Glory diner looked like every other Queens diner. Faded vinyl booths, coffee that tasted like burnt dirt, a menu that hadn't changed since 1987. It was 11:30, the lunch rush just starting, and the place smelled like grease and desperation. Ivy Mercer was serving coffee to a table of construction workers when Celine walked in. She was 26, thin to the point of gaunt, dark circles under her eyes that no amount of makeup could hide. Her hand shook as she poured coffee. Her smile was mechanical, practiced, dead. Celine recognized that smile. She'd worn it for 4 years. Torres and Diego waited outside in the SUV, watching the street. Kyle had wanted to come, but Celine had insisted on doing this alone. Some conversations needed to be between survivors. Celine slid into a corner booth. Waited. Ivy came over with a pot of coffee and that dead smile. "What can I get you?" "Just coffee, and 5 minutes of your time." Ivy's smile faltered. "I'm working." "I know, but I need to talk to you about Lucian Varela." The coffee pot slipped from Ivy's hand. It shattered against the linoleum, ceramic, and coffee exploding everywhere. Every head in the diner turned. "Shit," Ivy breathed. She was staring at Celine like she'd seen a ghost. You're Celine Vale. You married that crime boss. I saw it on the news. Serrano. Celine Serrano now." Celine kept her voice low, calm. "And yes, I married Kyle, but that's not why I'm here." Ivy was backing away. "I don't know anything. I can't help you, please, just, he hurt you too." Ivy froze. "Lucien," Celine continued quietly. "He hurt you, beat you, controlled you, and when you tried to fight back, he destroyed your life." Ivy's eyes filled with tears. How did you? Because he did the same thing to me, for 4 years. The diner manager appeared, red-faced and angry. Ivy, what the hell? Clean this up. Give her a minute, Selene said. She pulled out her wallet, dropped $200 on the table. For the coffee. And her time. The manager looked at the cash, looked at Celine's clothes, expensive even though she'd borrowed them from Khalil's ex-girlfriend's closet that he kept in storage for some reason. Looked at Torres and Diego visible through the window, clearly bodyguards. 5 minutes, he muttered, snatching the cash. Ivy collapsed into the booth across from Celine. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. I can't, she whispered. I tried. 2 years ago I tried to press charges and he destroyed me. I lost everything. My job, my apartment, my credibility. He made sure no one would ever hire me again, made sure everyone thought I was crazy. I know. The lawyers, the judge, the witnesses, everyone was either paid off or terrified. I had bruises, photographs, evidence, and it didn't matter. Nothing mattered because Lucien has money and power and connections. I know. So why are you here? Ivy's voice broke. Why are you dragging this back up? I've spent 2 years trying to forget, trying to survive, and now you? Because this time it's different, Celine said. This time he doesn't have the power. My husband is destroying his empire piece by piece. Federal investigations, frozen assets, investors fleeing. Within a month, Lucien won't have the money or connections to protect himself. Ivy stared at her. Your husband, the mob boss. Yes. You're asking me to testify against Lucien Varela, in court, in public, with the mob backing me. I'm asking you to help me put him in prison, where he belongs, where he can't hurt anyone else. Ivy laughed. It was a broken, bitter sound. You think testifying will fix this? You think a courtroom will give us justice? I tried that. It didn't work. You tried alone. This time, we do it together. Multiple victims, multiple testimonies, evidence from federal investigations. And Kyle, my husband, he's making sure Lucien can't pay his way out, can't threaten witnesses, can't make evidence disappear. By doing what? Threatening people himself? By being scarier than Lucien. Ivy looked out the window at Torres and Diego, at the blacked-out SUV that screamed organized crime, at the world Celine had married into. I'm terrified, Ivy whispered. Me too. If I do this, he'll kill me. Even without his empire, he'll find a way. Not if we put him in prison first. Celine reached across the table, took Ivy's trembling hand. I know what you've been through. I know the nightmares. I know what it's like to see his face every time you close your eyes. I know what it's like to be so broken you can't remember what whole feels like. Tears were streaming down Ivy's face. But I also know, Celine continued, that we deserve better. We deserve to look him in the eye and watch him face consequences. We deserve to take back the power he stole from us. I'm scared. I'm scared too. But I'm more angry than scared now, and anger is fuel. Ivy wiped her eyes, looked at Celine for a long moment. If I do this, she said slowly, I need protection, real protection, because the second Lucien knows I'm involved, he'll come for me. You'll have it, 24/7 security, new apartment, new identity if you want it. Kale's already arranging it. Just like that, your husband will he protects what's his. And right now, anyone helping me is his. Ivy pulled her hand back, stared at it like she didn't recognize it, like she was seeing herself clearly for the first time in years. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll do it. I'll testify. Celine felt something unlock in her chest. Relief. Hope. The beginning of something that might eventually be healing. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This is going to get ugly. It already is ugly. Now we're just making sure everyone else sees it too. They were halfway back to the penthouse when Torres's phone rang. He answered, listened, his face going hard. Fuck, he muttered. Yeah, we're 5 minutes out. Lock it down. He hung up. Met Kale's eyes in the rearview mirror. We've got a problem, boss. Lucien just showed up at your building. He's in the lobby. Says he wants to talk. Celine's blood went cold. He's there? Right now? Security won't let him up, but he's refusing to leave. Says he'll wait as long as it takes. He's baiting us, Diego said. Wants you to come down. Wants a confrontation in public where he can play the victim. Or, Kyle said quietly, he's desperate, cornered, making stupid moves because his empire is crumbling and he's losing control. What do we do? Celine asked. Kale thought for a moment, then smiled. We give him what he wants. Torres, call ahead. Have security escort him to the private conference room on the ground floor. Diego, you're with me. Celine, you stay in the car until I... No. Celine's voice was hard. I'm coming. He's there because of me. I'm not hiding. Celine, I said I'm coming. Kyle looked at her, saw something in her eyes that hadn't been there yesterday, something fierce and unbroken. Okay, he said, but you stay behind me. And if anything goes wrong, you run. Understood? Understood. The SUV pulled into the underground garage. They took the private elevator up to the ground floor, walked through the marble lobby while curious eyes followed them. The conference room was at the back, glass walls, expensive furniture, designed for corporate meetings. Lucian Varela sat at the head of the table like he owned the place. He'd changed clothes since the video this morning. Now he wore a charcoal suit that probably cost 20 grand, crisp white shirt, Italian shoes. His silver hair was perfect. His smile was perfect. He looked like money and power and untouchable elegance, but his eyes were desperate. Kale walked in first, Celine and Diego behind him. Torres stayed by the door. Lucien, Kale said pleasantly, this is unexpected. Is it? Lucian stood. You've spent the last 24 hours destroying my life. I thought a face-to-face conversation might be productive. Productive for who? For everyone. Lucien's eyes slid to Celine. His smile widened. Hello, darling. Marriage suits you. You look almost happy. Celine said nothing, but her hands were clenched into fists, nails cutting into her palms. Let's skip the pleasantries, Kale said. What do you want? I want you to stop. The federal investigation, the investors, the permits, all of it. Back off. Let me rebuild. And in exchange, I'll stay away from Celine. Clean break. No more contact. You think you're in a position to negotiate? I think I'm in a position to make your life very difficult. Lucian sat back down, crossed his legs casually. See, I've been keeping records too. Financial records. Transactions between your various businesses and some very interesting offshore accounts. Shipping manifests that don't quite add up. Conversations with politicians that the media would find fascinating. He smiled. You want to destroy me with the feds? I'll drag you down with me. The Serrano Syndicate will be investigated right alongside the Varela galleries. We'll both burn. Kyle pulled out a chair, sat down across from Lucien, relaxed, casual. Interesting threat. One problem. You're assuming I care about being investigated. You should. Your empire... My empire is a hydra, Lucian. Cut off one head, two grow back. The feds have been trying to nail me for a decade. They've got nothing that will stick. Everything I do is insulated, protected, buried under layers of legitimate business and legal protection. Kale leaned forward. But you're exposed, vulnerable. Your entire life is built on a reputation of respectability, philanthropist, art mogul, cultured gentleman. The second that reputation cracks, you're done. No amount of money will save you. No connections will help you, because everyone will abandon you to save themselves. Lucian's jaw tightened. You're making a mistake. No, you made the mistake. 4 years ago when you paid off Marcus Vale and took ownership of his daughter. When you spent 4 years beating her, breaking her, thinking you could own another human being. She was nothing when I found her. A gambling addict's daughter with no future. I gave her everything. Clothes, jewelry, a life of luxury. You gave her bruises and nightmares. Kale's voice dropped to something cold and lethal. You tortured her for 4 years. And then you had the balls to show up at my wedding and threaten her. I didn't threaten. The photo you sent last night. The message. That was a threat. And that was your second mistake. Lucian's face flushed red. You arrogant piece of... You think you can just take what's mine? You think a wedding certificate changes anything? She was never yours. I owned her! Lucien was on his feet now, composure cracking. 4 years. I paid for her. I shaped her. Every breath she took was because I allowed it. And you think you can just swoop in and play hero? You're a criminal, a thug. You're worse than me. Maybe, Kael said calmly, but I don't hurt women, which makes me better than you. Lucien's hand moved toward his jacket. Diego had a gun pressed against the back of Lucien's skull before he could blink. Don't, Diego said quietly. Whatever you're reaching for, don't. Torres moved forward, patted Lucien down, pulled out a small pistol from a shoulder holster. Concealed carry permit, Lucien spat. Perfectly legal. In New York? Doubt it. Torres ejected the magazine, cleared the chamber. But we'll let that slide, this time. Kael stood, buttoned his jacket, looked at Lucien with absolute contempt. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave this building. You're going to go back to whatever hole you crawled out of. And you're going to pray that I get bored of destroying you before you lose everything. This isn't over. Yes, it is. You just don't know it yet. She'll never be free of me, Lucien hissed. He was looking at Celine now, eyes burning with obsession. I'm in her head, in her bones. Every time she closes her eyes, she sees me. Every time someone touches her, she remembers my hands. I broke her, Serrano, and broken things don't heal. Celine stepped forward. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. You're right, she said quietly. You did break me. You spent 4 years making sure I knew I was nothing, that I belonged to you, that I'd never escape. Lucien smiled, triumphant. But broken things can be reforged, Celine continued. They can be melted down and reshaped into something stronger, something sharp, something dangerous. She moved closer, close enough that Lucien could see the fury in her eyes. I'm testifying against you, in court, under oath. I'm going to tell everyone what you did, show them the scars, the photographs, the evidence. And I'm going to watch you go to prison. Lucien's smile faltered. And when you're sitting in a cell, Celine said, when you've lost everything, when no one remembers your name except as a warning, I want you to remember this moment. Remember that the broken thing you created came back and destroyed you. Silence filled the conference room. Then Lucien laughed. Wild, desperate laughter that sounded like breaking glass. You stupid little bitch, he said. You think testifying will work? You think anyone will believe you? I'll bury you. My lawyers will tear you apart. And when they're done, everyone will know what you really are. A gold-digging whore who married a criminal for his money. Get him out, Kael said quietly. Torres and Diego grabbed Lucien's arms, started dragging him toward the door. This isn't over, Lucien screamed. She's mine. She'll always be mine. You can't protect her. I'll take her back. The door slammed shut, cutting off his screams. Celine stood in the middle of the conference room, shaking so hard she thought her bones might shatter. Then Kael's arms were around her, solid, real, anchoring her to the present. You did good, he murmured into her hair. You stood up to him. You didn't break. I feel like I'm going to throw up. That's normal. First time you face your demon, your body goes into shock. The first time, there's going to be more. The trial. When you testify, you'll have to face him again, in front of cameras, in front of the world. Celine pulled back, looked up at Kael. I can do it. I have to do it. I know. But you don't have to do it alone. You'll be there? Every second. And if he so much as looks at you wrong, I'll kill him right there in the courtroom. That would be bad for your legal defense. Worth it. Celine almost smiled. Almost. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but something made her answer. Hello? Heavy breathing on the other end. Then a voice. Young, female, terrified. Celine Vale? Yes. Who is this? My name is Ivy Mercer. We met this morning at the diner. Ivy? What's wrong? He knows. Ivy's voice was shaking. Lucien knows I talked to you. He sent someone to my apartment. They broke in. Left a note. It says if I testify, he'll kill me. He'll make it look like suicide and no one will question it because I'm just some nobody. And where are you? Still at the diner. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. I don't have anywhere to go. No money. No. Stay there. Don't move. We're coming to get you right now. 5 minutes. Do you understand? 5 minutes and you'll be safe. Okay, okay, please hurry. The line went dead. Kale was already on his phone, barking orders at Torres. Get a team to the Morning Glory Diner in Queens, now. Full security detail, and find out who broke into Ivy Mercer's apartment. I want names and addresses in the next hour. He hung up, looked at Celine. This is what I meant about ugly, he said. Lucien's desperate. He's making moves, going after witnesses. We need to protect her. We will. But Celine, this is just the beginning. When word gets out that you're both testifying, Lucien's going to come at you with everything he has. Threats, violence, legal warfare, character assassination. He'll try to break you before you ever get to that courtroom. Then we break him first. Kale smiled, dark, dangerous, proud. That's my girl. By midnight, Ivy Mercer was in a safe house in Brooklyn with round-the-clock security. Torres had pulled 2 ex-Special Forces guys out of retirement to watch her, men who'd killed for less interesting reasons than protecting a woman from her abuser. Kale's team had also found the man who broke into Ivy's apartment. Low-level enforcer, worked for a security company that Lucien had on retainer. The man was currently in a warehouse on the docks, having a very unpleasant conversation with Diego about the consequences of threatening witnesses. Celine didn't ask for details. She was learning not to. But as she sat in Kael's penthouse, watching the city lights flicker in the darkness, she felt something shift inside her. The fear was still there. The nightmares would still come. The scars, physical and emotional, would take years to fade. But underneath all that, something else was growing. Rage. Not the wild, out-of-control rage of a victim lashing out, but cold, calculated fury. The kind that built weapons instead of throwing punches. The kind that planned wars instead of starting fights. You're thinking loud, Kael said. He'd been working at his laptop for hours, coordinating the continued destruction of Lucien's empire, but now he was watching her. I want to learn, Celine said. Learn what? How to fight, how to protect myself, how to... She gestured at the laptop, the phones, the network of power and violence that Kael controlled. How to be dangerous. Kael closed the laptop. Why? Because I never want to be powerless again. I never want to freeze when someone threatens me. I never want to be the broken thing that needs protecting. You're not a thing, and needing protection doesn't make you weak. Maybe. But learning to protect myself makes me stronger. Kael studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Okay. Tomorrow we start. Self-defense, weapons training, situational awareness, all of it. Really? You're my wife. Partner. Equal. If you're going to survive in this world, my world, you need to know how to be dangerous. Celine felt something settle in her chest. Not peace, not yet, but purpose. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Training's going to hurt. You'll hate me by the end of the first week. I've survived worse pain. I know. That's why I think you'll be good at this. Celine stood, walked to the window, looked out at the city, Kael's city, the empire he'd built on blood and fear and violence. He's going to try to kill me, she said quietly. Before the trial, Lucien's going to realize that threats won't work and he'll try to kill me. Probably. You sound very calm about that. Because he'll fail. I've spent 10 years building this empire by making sure threats against me fail. And you're under the same protection now. He'd have better luck assassinating the president. What if... No, what ifs? Kael came up behind her, rested his hands on her shoulders. We deal with threats as they come. We stay 3 steps ahead. We make Lucien so busy defending himself that he doesn't have time to come after you. And if he does, then I bury him, literally. Celine should have been horrified by that. Should have been scared of the casual way Kael talked about murder. But she wasn't. Because for the first time in 4 years, she felt something other than fear. She felt safe. 3 days later, everything went to hell. Celine was at the gun range with Diego, learning to shoot. Her hands were steady now, her breathing controlled. The target downrange had a neat grouping of holes in the center mass. Good, Diego said. Again, this time faster. Celine loaded a new magazine, raised the pistol, fired 6 shots in rapid succession, all center mass. Damn, Diego muttered. natural talent, or 4 years of imagining this exact scenario with Lucien's face on the target. That works too. Selene's phone rang. Kael. She set the gun down, pulled off her ear protection. Hey, we have a problem. Kael's voice was tight, controlled. Lucien made his move. Selene's stomach dropped. What happened? He didn't come after you. He went after someone else. Someone we should have protected. Who? Your father. The world tilted sideways. What? Marcus Vale is dead. They found him an hour ago in his apartment. Single gunshot to the head. Made to look like suicide, but the evidence is sloppy. This was a message. Selene couldn't breathe. Couldn't think past the rushing in her ears. Her father. The man who'd sold her. The man who'd stood by while Lucien tortured her. The man who'd chosen money over his daughter. He was dead. Selene? Kael's voice cut through the noise. I need you to listen to me. This is a trap. Lucien killed your father knowing you'd react, knowing you'd go to the police, maybe testify about your father's connection to him. He's trying to force your hand before we're ready. He killed my father. I know. Selene's voice cracked. I hated him. I hated my father for what he did. But I didn't want him dead. I know. Come back to the penthouse. Now. We need to talk about next steps. Selene hung up, stood there in the gun range, surrounded by spent brass and the smell of gunpowder, and felt something inside her crystallize into diamond-hard certainty. This ended now. Not later. Not at trial. Now. She picked up the pistol, checked the magazine, looked at Diego. Where does Lucien live? Diego's expression went carefully blank. Boss wouldn't want you doing anything stupid. I'm not doing anything stupid. I'm asking a question. Selena, where does he live? Diego sighed, pulled out his phone, showed her an address. Waterfront estate in the Hamptons, gated, private security, the kind of place that was built to keep threats out. Don't do this, Diego said quietly. I've seen that look before, on soldiers right before they did something that got them killed. My father is dead because of me, because I married Kael, because I decided to fight back. Your father is dead because Lucien Varela is a monster who murders anyone he sees as a threat. Same thing. It's not. Selene tucked the pistol into her purse, walked toward the exit. You gonna tell Kael? She asked. Probably should. But you won't, because you understand. You know what it's like to need revenge. Diego was quiet for a moment, then, take Torres with you at least, and wear a vest. And for fuck's sake, don't actually try to kill him. We need him alive for trial. No promises. Selene walked out of the gun range into the late afternoon sun, got into her car, one of Kael's, something fast and expensive, and started driving. She knew this was stupid. Knew Kael would be furious. Knew she was walking into exactly the trap Lucien had set. But she didn't care, because sometimes revenge mattered more than survival. And sometimes the only way to stop being afraid was to face the monster head-on and refuse to blink first. The drive to the Hamptons took 2 hours, plenty of time for Selene to second-guess herself, to turn around, to call Kael and tell him what she was doing. She didn't. Lucien's estate appeared through the trees like something out of a magazine, glass and steel and modern architecture overlooking the ocean. The gate was closed, security cameras everywhere. Selene pulled up to the intercom. Hit the button. A voice answered. Yes? Tell Lucien that Selene Serrano is here to talk. Long pause. Then, one moment. The gate opened. Selene drove through, hands steady on the wheel, heart hammering against her ribs. She parked in the circular driveway. Got out. The ocean wind cut through her jacket, cold and sharp. The front door opened. Lucien stood there in casual clothes. Jeans, cashmere sweater, bare feet. He looked relaxed, amused. Selene, he said, this is unexpected and incredibly stupid. We need to talk, do we? Or do you need to shoot me with whatever's in your purse? Selene's hand tightened on her bag. Lucien laughed. Come inside. Let's have a conversation, like civilized people. You killed my father. Did I? Interesting theory. I'm sure the police will investigate thoroughly. You murdered him because he was my connection to you. Because without him, there's no paper trail linking me to the debt. No way to prove our relationship was transactional. Smart girl. You always were smarter than Marcus gave you credit for. This ends tonight. Does it? How exactly do you plan to end it, Celine? By shooting me? That would be very satisfying, I'm sure. But it would also make you a murderer, ruin your credibility, destroy any chance you have at testifying against me in court. Lucien stepped aside, gestured into the house. Or you could come inside, have a drink, and I'll tell you exactly how this ends. Because despite what your criminal husband thinks, I'm still 3 moves ahead. Celine knew she should leave, should call Kyle, should run. But she walked through that door anyway, because some conversations had to happen face to face. Some wars had to be fought on enemy ground, and some monsters needed to look their victims in the eye and see that they weren't victims anymore. The door closed behind her with a sound like a coffin lid dropping, and Celine Serrano walked into the darkness, knowing she might not walk back out. End part 2. Celine has walked into Lucien's trap, alone, armed, and dangerous. Kale doesn't know where she is. Torres and Diego are minutes behind, but might be too late. And Lucien has been planning this confrontation since the moment she married Kyle. Inside that house, 4 years of violence and survival will collide. Only one of them walks out alive. But which one? The house smelled like money and death. Not literal death, not yet, but the kind of sterile perfection that came from a life built on control and violence. White marble floors. Modern art that probably cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Atlantic, waves crashing against private beach in the darkness outside. Celine's hand stayed on her purse, on the gun inside. Her finger itched to pull it out, to end this right here, right now. But Lucien was watching her with that same predator smile, waiting for her to make the first move, wanting her to. "Drink?" he asked, walking to a bar that looked like it belonged in a 5-star hotel. "I'm not here to socialize." "No, you're here to what? Threaten me? Kill me? Save the world from the big bad monster?" Lucien poured 2 glasses of scotch anyway. Expensive stuff, the kind that cost $1,000 a bottle. "You've been spending too much time with your gangster husband, starting to think like him. Maybe that's what I need. Someone who understands that monsters like you don't respond to reason." Lucien laughed. He crossed the room, held out a glass. When Celine didn't take it, he shrugged and drank from both, one after the other. "Not poisoned," he said, "though I appreciate the paranoia. It shows you're learning." "You killed my father." "Your father killed himself. Gambling debts he couldn't pay. Shame over what he'd done to his daughter. Take your pick. The police will write it up as suicide and everyone will move on. Except I know the truth." "Do you?" Lucien set the glasses down, moved closer. "Tell me, Celine, what do you really know? You know I paid your father's debts. You know we had an arrangement. You know I was, let's call it firm, in my expectations of you. You tortured me for 4 years. I disciplined you. There's a difference. You were wild, undisciplined. I gave you structure, purpose. I turned you into something valuable." Celine's hand moved toward her purse. Lucien held up a finger. "Before you do something stupid, you should know that there are 3 security guards in this house, all armed, all with orders to shoot anyone who threatens me. You pull that gun, you're dead before you can aim it." "Then why let me in?" "Because I wanted to see if you'd come. Wanted to see if 4 years of training stuck, or if 1 month with Kyle Serrano undid all my work." He studied her face. "And I have to say, I'm disappointed. The Celine I knew would never have walked into an obvious trap, would never have let emotion override self-preservation. The Celine you knew was terrified, broken. That's not who I am anymore, isn't it? You're still reacting instead of thinking, still letting me control the board." Lucien walked to the windows, looked out at the ocean. "Your father's death wasn't about eliminating a witness. It was about making you do exactly this. Come here, alone, angry, predictable." Celine's stomach twisted. "What are you talking about?" "I needed you away from Kyle's protection, away from his security. Somewhere private where we could have a real conversation without interruption." He turned back to her. "And you walked right into it, because underneath all that newfound courage, you're still the frightened girl who does what she's told. Fuck you." There she is, the anger, the defiance. I missed that. You were so much more interesting when you fought back. Celine's phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it. That's probably your husband, Lucien said, calling to tell you to get out, to warn you that you're in danger, but you won't answer, will you? Because part of you wants this confrontation, needs it. 4 years of swallowing your rage, and now you finally have permission to let it out. Stop analyzing me like I'm one of your art pieces. But that's exactly what you are. A work in progress. I spent 4 years sculpting you, and Kael's trying to reshape what I created. The question is, which version of Celine is real? The broken one I owned, or the dangerous one he's building? Celine pulled the gun, fast, smooth, the way Diego had taught her. Lucien didn't flinch. Go ahead, he said softly. Shoot me. End this. But understand what happens next. My security kills you. The police investigate. They find a scorned woman who murdered the man who supposedly abused her. No trial, no testimony, no justice. Just 2 bodies and a story about a violent marriage and a jealous wife. Kael will make sure people know the truth. Will he? Or will he be too busy defending himself against murder conspiracy charges? Because that's what happens when a mob boss's wife kills someone. The feds assume he ordered it, and suddenly, instead of me in prison, it's Kael Serrano facing life without parole. Celine's hand wavered. The gun felt heavy. Wrong. You didn't think this through, Lucien continued. His voice was almost gentle now, patronizing. You came here on emotion, on rage, but rage isn't strategy. It's just noise. Then why are you scared? I'm not scared. You're talking too much, stalling, waiting for something. Celine's eyes narrowed. Where are your security guards? You said there were 3, so where are they? Lucien's smile faltered, just for a second, just enough, and Celine understood. There are no guards. You're alone. You let me in because you're desperate. Because Kael's destroyed your empire, and you're scrambling for leverage. I have plenty of leverage. Like what? My father's dead. Ivy's in protective custody. Your money's frozen. Your investors fled. Your political connections abandoned you. Celine took a step closer, gun steady now. You're not 3 moves ahead. You're drowning. Lucien's face twisted. The mask cracked. All that cultured elegance peeled away to reveal something ugly and desperate underneath. You stupid bitch, he hissed. You think marrying a criminal gives you power? You think Kael Serrano actually cares about you? You're a transaction, a piece of property that changed hands. He's using you just like I did. No, he's not. Isn't he? Tell me, Celine, has he touched you? Has he demanded his husbandly rights? Or is he waiting until you're broken enough to comply without fighting? Celine's jaw tightened. He's given me space, respect, things you never understood. He's grooming you, just more patiently than I did. Lucien moved toward a desk in the corner. But fine, you want to know the truth? The real truth about your knight in shining armor? He pulled out a folder, thick manila, stuffed with documents. Kael Serrano didn't marry you for love or protection or any of that romantic bullshit. He married you because of this. He threw the folder at her feet, papers scattered across the marble. Celine didn't look down. What is it? Insurance documents? Legal papers? A contract between your father and the Serrano syndicate dating back 6 months before your wedding. Lucien's smile was vicious now. Your father didn't just owe me money. He owed Kael too. 15 million in gambling debts to a casino that Kael owns through shell companies. Celine's blood went cold. Kael offered him a deal, Lucien continued. Marry his daughter to legitimize the Serrano name. In exchange, the debt disappears. Your father jumped at it. Didn't even tell you about Kael's involvement until the wedding was already arranged. You're lying. Am I? Look at the dates, the signatures, your father's, Kael's lawyer. This was planned months before you ever met your husband. Celine's hands were shaking. She wanted to not look at the papers, wanted to believe Lucien was just manipulating her again. But she looked anyway. And there it was, her father's signature. Dates from 6 months ago, contract terms laying out a marriage arrangement in exchange for debt forgiveness. No, she whispered. Yes. You were never anything more than a business transaction. I bought you from your father. Then Kael bought you from me, passed around like property. Lucien's voice was poison. The only difference is I was honest about owning you. Kyle pretends it's something noble. Celine's vision blurred. Her chest hurt. She couldn't breathe past the weight crushing her lungs. It was all a lie. Everything. Kyle's protection, his promises, his rage at what Lucien had done. He'd known. He'd known about her father's debts, about Lucien, about everything, and he'd married her anyway. Not to save her, to acquire her. I can see the wheels turning, Lucien said. He sounded almost sympathetic now. You're realizing that you traded one cage for another, that Kyle's penthouse is just a prettier prison than mine was. Shut up. He's probably tracking your phone right now, sending his thugs to collect his property. Take you back to your gilded cage where you'll be safe and controlled and— Oh! Shut up! Celine fired. The gun kicked in her hands. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. The bullet punched through the window behind Lucien's head, glass exploding outward into the night. Lucien didn't move, just stood there, smiling like he'd won. There it is, he whispered. The violence I cultivated, the rage I built. You can't escape what I made you, Celine. Even with Kyle's protection, even with all your training, you're still mine. Celine's phone was ringing again. She pulled it out with her free hand, looked at the screen. Kyle. Her thumb hovered over the answer button. Everything in her wanted to answer, wanted to hear his voice, wanted him to explain that the documents were fake, that Lucien was lying, that everything was going to be okay. But she couldn't make herself believe it anymore. She declined the call, turned off the phone, looked at Lucien with something cold and final settling in her chest. You're right, she said quietly. I am what you made me. Broken, violent, damaged beyond repair. She raised the gun, aimed at his chest. But that means I'm also capable of this? Lucien's smile vanished. Celine, don't— The front door exploded inward. Kale came through first, gun drawn, Torres and Diego behind him. They moved like a military unit, smooth and practiced, covering angles and clearing corners. Kale's eyes found Celine, found the gun in her hand, found Lucien standing there with his hands raised. Celine, Kale said carefully, put the gun down. You knew. Her voice was hollow. About my father's debts, about the arrangement. You knew everything, and you married me anyway. Kale's jaw tightened. Let me explain. Explain what? That I'm just another business transaction? That marrying me was about wiping out a debt and gaining respectability? It's more complicated than that. Is it? Because these documents make it pretty fucking simple. She kicked the folder toward him. Papers scattered across the floor between them. Kale glanced down, saw what Lucien had shown her. His expression went carefully blank. Where did you get these? Does it matter? Are they real? Silence. Heavy. Damning. Are they real? Celine's voice cracked. Did you buy me from my father? Did you plan this whole thing months before we met? Yes, Kale said quietly. The contract is real. But Celine made a sound like something breaking inside her. The gun wavered in her hand. Celine, listen to me. You lied to me. You stood there in your penthouse and promised to protect me. Promised that I belonged to you and no one would hurt me again. And the whole time you were just protecting your investment. That's not— Then what is it? Tell me, Kyle. Tell me the truth for once in this entire fucking marriage. Kale holstered his gun, held up his hands, took a step forward. Torres and Diego stayed by the door, weapons ready, watching Lucien. 6 months ago, your father came to me, Kyle said. His voice was steady, controlled. He owed me $15 million. He couldn't pay. Usually, I'd just kill someone like that, right off the debt, but he offered me something more valuable than money. Me. Legitimacy. A marriage connection to an old money family. Something that would help me transition the Serrano businesses from criminal to legitimate. Something I needed to protect what I'd built. So you said yes. I said I'd consider it. Then I did my research, found out about you, about Lucien, about what your father had done. Kale took another step closer. I could have walked away, found legitimacy somewhere else. But when I read what Lucien had done to you, the reports, the hospital visits you tried to hide, the bruises, I made a choice. To buy me anyway. To give you a way out. The marriage contract had terms your father didn't tell you about. Clauses that gave you control. Money in your name, property rights, legal protections. If you wanted to leave after a year, you could. with enough money to disappear. Start over. Be free. Celine stared at him. You're lying. Torres, Kale said, show her the full contract. The pages Marcus Vale never showed his daughter. Torres pulled out his phone. A few taps, then he crossed the room, handed it to Celine. She read, her hands shaking, her vision blurring, and there it was. Clauses she'd never seen, terms her father had deliberately hidden, financial independence, property rights, a divorce option after 1 year with full asset protection, an escape hatch. You were supposed to tell me, she whispered. Before the wedding, you were supposed to explain all this. I was, Kael said. But then we met, and you looked so terrified, so broken, that I couldn't make it worse by explaining that your father had sold you. Again, I thought... He stopped, swallowed. I thought if I just protected you first, showed you that you were safe, I could explain later when you were ready to hear it. You still lied. I did. And I'm sorry, but everything I've done since that wedding, destroying Lucy Yen, protecting Ivy, teaching you to fight back, that wasn't about business, that was about you. Lucian laughed, sharp and bitter. How touching. The gangster has a heart. But let's be honest, Serrano, you married her for legitimacy. Everything else is just window dressing to make yourself feel noble. Shut up, Kale said without looking at him. She's still just property to you. A trophy wife with a sad backstory that makes you look like a hero instead of what you really are. A violent criminal using her family name to... Kale moved, fast. 1 second he was standing still, the next his fist connected with Lucien's jaw. Bone crunched. Lucien went down hard, blood spraying across the white marble. I said, shut up! Lucien laughed through broken teeth. There it is, the violence. Just like me, Serrano. We're the same. We're nothing alike, aren't we? We both bought her. We both use her. The only difference is honesty. Lucien spat blood. At least I never pretended to be her savior. Kale pulled his gun, aimed it at Lucien's head. Kale, don't. Torres moved forward. We need him alive, for trial, for... I don't give a fuck about trial. Yes, you do. Because if you kill him now, everything we've built falls apart. The investigation, the witnesses, the case, all of it becomes about you committing murder. And Celine loses her chance at real justice. Kael's finger tightened on the trigger, his hand steady, his eyes cold. Then he looked at Celine, still standing there with her own gun, still shaking, still looking at him like she didn't know whether to trust him or shoot him. Tell me what to do, Kael said quietly. He's yours. Whatever you want, trial, bullet, or watching him drown in the ocean outside, it's your choice. Celine looked at Lucien, broken and bleeding on the floor, looking up at her with that same smug expression, even through the pain. Then she looked at Kael, the man who'd bought her, protected her, lied to her, fought for her. She didn't know which version was real, didn't know if any version was real. I can't do this, she whispered. She lowered her gun. I can't. I don't know what's true anymore, what's manipulation, and what's real. Her legs gave out. Kale caught her before she hit the floor, held her while she fell apart, while 4 years of trauma and 1 month of hope and 10 minutes of devastating truth crashed through her all at once. Get him out of here, Kale told Torres. Take him back to the city, lock him down, and find out who gave him those documents. Someone on our side leaked information. Torres and Diego hauled Lucien to his feet, dragged him toward the door. This isn't over, Lucien screamed. She'll never trust you. You'll never be anything but the man who bought her. Diego hit him, hard. Lucien went quiet. They disappeared into the night, engine sounds fading into the distance. Kael and Celine stayed on the floor, her crying, him holding her, the ocean crashing outside the broken window, cold air pouring in. I'm sorry, Kael said into her hair. I should have told you. Should have been honest from the beginning, but I... Stop. Celine pulled back. Her face was wrecked, mascara running, eyes red, nose bleeding slightly where she'd bit her lip too hard. I need you to answer one question, and I need the truth. Not strategy, not what you think I want to hear, just truth. Okay. Do you care about me? At all? Or am I just... Her voice broke. Just another piece on your board? Kale was quiet for a long time. Too long. Long enough that Celine's heart started breaking all over again. Then he spoke. 2 years ago, my sister was killed by a man who abused her for years, beat her, raped her, controlled every aspect of her life. I didn't know. She hid it because she was ashamed, because she thought no one would believe her, because he was wealthy and connected and convinced her that telling anyone would make things worse. His voice was rough, raw. When she finally tried to leave him, he killed her, made it look like a suicide, and Kale stopped, swallowed. I found her, saw what he'd done, saw the bruises, the fear in her dead eyes, and I knew. I knew she'd been suffering and I'd missed it. I'd failed her. Celine's breath caught. I killed him, Kale continued, slowly, painfully. Made sure he understood exactly why he was dying. But it didn't bring her back, didn't undo the years of torture, didn't give her justice, just gave me revenge. He looked at Celine, really looked at her. When I read about what Lucien did to you, I saw my sister, saw another woman trapped by a monster, and I thought, maybe this time I could do it right. Maybe this time I could save someone before it was too late. Tears were streaming down his face now, silent, uncontrolled. So yes, the marriage started as business. Yes, I knew about your father's debt. Yes, I had ulterior motives. But the second I met you, the second you whispered those 6 words during our kiss, it stopped being about legitimacy or business or anything else. It became about making sure no one ever hurt you again. He cupped her face in his hands. You're not a piece on my board, Celine. You're not property or a transaction or an investment. His voice cracked. You're the first thing I've cared about more than my empire in 10 years. And that terrifies me. Because caring about people makes you vulnerable, makes you weak. But I can't stop. I can't. Celine kissed him, hard, desperate, angry and grateful and confused all at once. Kale kissed back, his hands in her hair. Her hands gripping his jacket like she was drowning, and he was the only thing keeping her above water. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Celine rested her forehead against his. I don't forgive you, she whispered, for lying, for the contract, for buying me like I was something that could be owned. I know. But I believe you, about your sister, about caring, about trying to do the right thing in the most fucked up way possible. That's something. It's not enough, not yet. You're going to have to earn my trust, really earn it. No more secrets, no more strategy, just truth. I can do that. Can you? Because your whole life is built on secrets and strategy and controlling information. Kyle smiled, tired, genuine. Then I'll learn. For you, I'll learn. They stayed like that for a while. 2 broken people holding each other together on a marble floor in a stranger's house. Outside, the ocean kept crashing, relentless, eternal, indifferent to human suffering. Finally, Celine's phone buzzed. She'd turned it back on without thinking. Text from Torres. Boss, we have a problem. Lucien's lawyer showed up with a judge. They got him released on bail. He's gone. Celine's blood went cold. No, 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 no. She showed Kale the message. His face went dark. Murderous. How the fuck? Another text. Someone paid his bail. 20 million cash. Came from an offshore account we can't trace. He walked out of custody 10 minutes ago. We've got people looking, but... He's running, Celine said. Her voice was numb. He knows we're coming for him, and he's running. We'll find him. I've got resources, contacts. We'll track him down and... Celine's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. Hello? Heavy breathing. Then Lucien's voice, calm, cold, victorious. Did you really think it would be that easy? That you could just testify and make me disappear? Where are you? Somewhere you'll never find me. Somewhere your husband's money and violence can't reach. But don't worry, I'll be watching, waiting. And when you least expect it, when you finally think you're safe, I'll come back for you. You're finished, Lucien. Your empire's gone. Your money's frozen. You've got nothing. I have you. In my head. In my nightmares. In every moment of peace you think you've found. You'll never be free of me, Celine, because I own you. I'll always own you. Fuck you. Give Kale a message for me. Tell him thank you for making this so much more interesting than it had to be. I would have gotten bored with you eventually. But now, Now you're worth hunting. The line went dead. Celine sat there, phone pressed to her ear, listening to dead air and feeling her entire world collapse. Lucien was gone, free, unpunished, and he was coming back. Kale took the phone from her shaking hands, listened to the dial tone, then threw it against the wall hard enough to shatter. He's not going to stop, Celine whispered. He'll keep coming, keep hunting. We put him on trial. He'll disappear before sentencing. We try to find him. He'll have moved. We kill him. Kale's voice was absolute, final. No trial, no testimony, no justice system that can be bought or manipulated. We find him and I put a bullet in his head. That makes you a murderer. I'm already a murderer. Have been since I was 22. At least this time it'll be for something that matters. Celine wanted to argue, wanted to believe there was another way, a better way. But she couldn't, because Lucien was right. The system wouldn't stop him. Money and connections would keep him free. He'd run forever, always one step ahead, always watching, always waiting for his moment to strike. The only way to stop a monster wasn't law or justice or hope. It was becoming something worse than the monster. Then we hunt him, Celine said. Her voice was cold now, dead. Together, we find him, and we end this. Kale looked at her, saw the transformation happening in real time, saw the last pieces of innocence dying in her eyes, saw her becoming something harder, sharper, dangerous, saw her becoming someone who could survive in his world. You understand what that means? He asked quietly. What we'll have to do? Yes. There's no going back from this. You cross this line, you can't uncross it. You'll be a killer, a criminal, a monster. Celine stood up, brushed glass from her clothes. I know, but at least I'll be alive. At least I'll be free. She looked at Kyle with eyes that had seen too much and survived anyway. You said you'd teach me to be dangerous, so teach me. Teach me how to hunt, how to kill, how to become the kind of person Lucien Varela fears when he closes his eyes at night. Kyle studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Okay, but once we start this, we don't stop until he's dead. No hesitation, no mercy, no second chances. Good, because he didn't give me any either. They walked out of Lucien's house together, through the broken door, across the manicured lawn, into the SUV where Torres waited with the engine running. Behind them, the ocean kept crashing against the shore. The house stood empty. Blood on the marble floor, broken glass, scattered papers that proved some truths were more damaging than lies. And somewhere in the darkness, Lucien Varela was running, free, victorious, convinced he'd won. But he'd made one fatal mistake. He'd taught Celine how to be a victim. Now Kyle was teaching her how to be a killer. And when they found him, and they would find him, Lucien would learn that broken things don't just heal. Sometimes they sharpen into weapons. Sometimes they become the very thing that destroys their creator. The hunt had begun. And this time, there would be no survivors. Only justice. Bloody, brutal, and absolute. End part 3. Lucien is loose, protected by money and distance, and the kind of connections that make men untouchable. The trial is dead. The law has failed. Selene and Kyle are no longer playing by civilized rules. They're preparing for war. But hunting a ghost costs more than money. It costs innocence, humanity, the very soul they're fighting to protect. And somewhere in the darkness ahead, Lucien is waiting, planning his revenge, building his trap. The final battle is coming. But who's hunting who? The war room in Kyle's penthouse looked like something out of a military operation. Maps covered the walls, shipping routes, airports, border crossings. Laptops showed surveillance feeds from airports in 12 countries. Phones rang constantly with updates from informants scattered across 3 continents. The air smelled like coffee and adrenaline and the particular tension that comes before violence. Celine stood at the window, watching dawn break over the city. She hadn't slept in 36 hours. Her hands were steady now. No more shaking, no more fear, just cold calculation and the kind of focus that came from accepting you were about to become a killer. Behind her, Kyle was coordinating with his network, Torres at his side, Diego working 3 phones at once, 6 other men, enforcers, trackers, the kind of people who found ghosts for a living, scattered around the room comparing intel. Lucien used a private charter out of Teterboro, Torres said, stabbing a finger at a map. Filed flight plan for Montreal, but the plane refueled in Virginia and changed course. Landed in Mexico City 4 hours ago. Mexico City's too obvious, Diego said. He wants us to think he's running south, probably doubled back. Changed identities. Could be anywhere by now. Not anywhere. Kyle pulled up a financial document on his laptop. He accessed one of his hidden accounts 6 hours ago. $3 million withdrawal from a bank in the Cayman Islands. That money went somewhere. Find out where. One of the enforcers, a thin man with a scar across his throat named Marcus, looked up from his computer. Got something? Private yacht registered to a shell company. Left Cayman Islands harbor 2 hours after the withdrawal. Currently heading northeast, toward the Bahamas. He's island hopping, Torres said. Staying in international waters, making it harder to track. Then we follow him into international waters. Cale's voice was ice. Get me everything on that yacht. Size, crew, weapons capability, and find out where it's really heading. He's not running to the Bahamas for vacation. Celine turned from the window. He's going to his safe house. Everyone looked at her. What safe house? Kyle asked. He mentioned it once. When he was... She stopped, swallowed. When he was hurting me. Said if things ever got bad, he had a place no one could touch him. Private island, somewhere in the Caribbean, fully staffed, fortified, the kind of place you disappear to when the world's after you. You never mentioned this before. I didn't think it was real. Thought it was just another way to make me feel powerless, like he could vanish whenever he wanted, and I'd never escape him. Cale's jaw tightened. Marcus, cross-reference shell companies registered to Lucien or his known associates with private island purchases in the Caribbean over the last 10 years. Marcus's fingers flew across the keyboard. 2 minutes later, he whistled low. Got it. Small island 50 miles north of Turks and Caicos. Purchased 8 years ago through a Panamanian corporation that traces back to one of Lucien's offshore accounts. The island's called Isla Perdida. Lost Island in Spanish. How big? 20 acres. According to satellite imagery, there's one main compound. Helicopter pad. Private dock. Looks like it's designed to be self-sufficient. Diego leaned over to look at the screen. That's a fucking fortress. Stone walls, guard towers, security systems. You can't just walk in there. Then we don't walk. Kyle pulled up more files. We come in fast and hard. Helicopter assault. 3-man strike team. In and out before his security knows what's happening. Too risky, Torres said. We don't know how many guards he has. What kind of weapons? This could be a death trap. It's the only way. He knows we're coming. Every hour we wait, he gets more fortified. More prepared. Kyle looked at Celine. You don't have to come. You can stay here. Let us handle this. No. Her voice was absolute. I need to be there. Need to look him in the eye when this ends. Celine, I'm coming, Kale. Don't try to protect me from this. I'm past protection. I need closure. And the only way I get that is by being there when he dies. Kale studied her face. Saw the transformation that had happened over the last month. The broken woman in the wedding dress was gone. This was someone harder, someone who'd looked at darkness and decided to become it. Okay, he said, but you follow my lead. Do exactly what I say. This isn't about revenge anymore. It's about survival. You hesitate, you die. Understood? Understood. Then gear up. We leave in 2 hours. The helicopter cut through Caribbean sky like a knife. Celine sat in the back, strapped in, wearing tactical gear that Kael's people had fitted her with. Kevlar vest, black fatigues, boots designed for running on rough terrain, a Glock 19 holstered at her hip, extra magazines, knife strapped to her ankle. She looked like a soldier, felt like something else entirely, something hovering between human and weapon. Kael sat across from her, checking his rifle. Torres was piloting, Diego beside him, watching radar and thermal imaging. They'd left at midnight, flying low to avoid detection, following the coordinates Marcus had pulled from satellite data. 5 minutes out, Torres said through the headset. Thermal shows 6 heat signatures in the main compound. Could be guards, could be staff. Can't tell from this altitude. Any weapons? Can't confirm, but assume they're armed. Lucian's paranoid enough to have a small army down there. Kale looked at Celine. Last chance to back out. She checked her pistol, chambered around. Not a chance. When we land, stay behind me. Diego takes point. I'm second. You're third. Torres covers our six. We clear the compound room by room. Anyone who's armed is hostile. Anyone who runs gets one warning. They don't stop, we drop them. What about Lucien? We take him alive if possible. I want him to answer for what he did, but if he fights back, if there's any chance of him escaping, we end it. Clean. Final. Celine nodded. Her heart was hammering now, adrenaline flooding her system, every nerve alive and screaming. This was it. The moment everything had been building toward. 4 years of torture, 1 month of training, 36 hours of hunting, all of it leading to this island, this compound, this final confrontation. 2 minutes, Torres said. I'm seeing movement below. They know we're coming. The helicopter dropped fast. Celine's stomach lurched. Through the window, she could see the island now, dark mass of stone and jungle, lights blazing from the compound like a beacon. Then gunfire erupted from below, muzzle flashes in the darkness, bullets pinging off the helicopter's armored hull. Fuck! Torres yanked the stick, banking hard. They've got heavy weapons down there. I can't land in the courtyard. Too much fire. Put us on the beach, Kael said. East side. We'll approach on foot. The helicopter swooped low, skimming over black water. Celine could see the beach now. White sand, palm trees, and beyond that, the compound rising like a medieval fortress against the night sky. Torres brought them down hard. The skids hit sand and everyone was moving, doors sliding open, bodies hitting the ground, running for cover as more gunfire erupted from the compound walls. Celine ran. Her training took over, staying low, moving fast, finding cover behind a line of rocks. Kale was beside her, rifle up, scanning for targets. Diego and Torres spread out, creating a perimeter. 6 hostiles on the wall, Diego called out. Automatic weapons. They've got the high ground. Suppress them, Kael said. I'm going for the service entrance on the east side. Celine, Torres, with me. Diego, keep them busy. Diego opened up with his rifle. Controlled bursts. Return fire from the walls intensified but shifted toward his position. Kael moved. Celine followed, Torres behind her. They ran along the beach, using palm trees and rocks for cover. Bullets chewed up sand around them. One passed so close to Celine's head she felt the heat of it. But she didn't stop, didn't freeze, just kept running. They reached the compound wall. Kael found the service entrance, reinforced steel door with electronic lock. He pulled out a small explosive charge, planted it, waved everyone back. The explosion was sharp and brutal. The door blew inward in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. They went through fast, into darkness. A service corridor lit by emergency lights, concrete walls, pipes running along the ceiling, the smell of salt water and machinery. Clear left, Torres whispered. Clear right, Celine said, her voice steady, her hand steady, everything steady except her heartbeat trying to punch through her chest. They moved deeper. The corridor opened into a larger room, generator station by the sound of it, machines humming, no guards, but voices ahead, shouting. Orders being given in Spanish and English. Kale held up a fist. Everyone stopped. He pointed to a door on the far side, mouthed the words, "Through there." They crossed the room. Kale tested the door handle, unlocked. He pushed it open a crack, looked through, then he pulled back, held up 4 fingers, 4 hostiles. He gestured the plan. Diego takes 2 on the left. Kael takes 2 on the right. Celine and Torres hold the door. On 3. 1, 2, 3. They burst through. Diego and Kael fired in perfect sync. 4 shots. 4 bodies hitting the floor before they could even raise their weapons. The room beyond was some kind of security station. Monitors showing camera feeds from around the compound. Radio equipment. Maps. The guards had been watching the beach assault, hadn't expected an attack from inside. "Where's Lucien?" Kael demanded, scanning the monitors. Torres leaned over the console. "There." He pointed to one screen. "3rd floor. Looks like a master suite. He's there with 2 more guards." "That's where we're going. Move." They left the security station, moved through corridors that grew more luxurious as they climbed. Concrete gave way to marble. Emergency lights gave way to chandeliers. This wasn't a fortress anymore. It was a palace, Lucien's palace, his final refuge. They reached the third floor, a long hallway lined with expensive art. Door at the end standing open, light spilling out, voices inside. Kael moved up first, rifle shouldered, each step measured, professional. Celine followed. Her pistol felt heavy in her hands now, real. This was happening. This was... A guard stepped out of the doorway. Young kid, maybe 25, eyes wide with fear. "Don't move!" he shouted in accented English. His rifle came up, aimed at Kael. "Put it down," Kael said calmly. "You don't want to die for him. He pays me. He's going to die tonight. You can die with him, or you can walk away." The guard's hands were shaking. He was just a kid. Just some kid from the islands who took money to stand in a doorway and probably never thought he'd actually have to fight. "Put the gun down," Kael said again. "Last chance." The guard looked at Kael's eyes, saw death staring back. He dropped the rifle, raised his hands. "I'm out. I'm done. Go!" Kael gestured toward the stairs. "Run and don't look back." The kid ran, footsteps echoing down the corridor. "That was a mistake," Diego muttered. "He'll alert!" Gunfire erupted from the room. Bullets punched through the door frame, chewing up wood and plaster. Everyone dove for cover. The second guard was shooting blind, just laying down suppressing fire, trying to buy time. "Grenade!" Torres said. "No, too close. Lucien might be in there." "Then we go in hard." Kael nodded. He pulled a flashbang from his vest, pulled the pin, counted to 3, threw it through the doorway. The explosion was deafening, even through walls. Flash of light like a sun going off. They moved. Through the door. Into chaos. Smoke and confusion. The second guard was down, clutching his eyes, screaming. Diego put 2 rounds in his chest. He stopped screaming. The room was massive. Master suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean, king-sized bed, expensive furniture, artwork that belonged in museums, and Lucien Varela standing by the window, holding a pistol aimed at his own head. "Stop right there," he said. His voice was steady despite the gun, despite everything. "One more step and I pull the trigger." Kael froze, rifle aimed at Lucien's chest. "Put it down." "Why? So you can kill me? So your wife can watch me bleed out on this floor?" Lucien smiled, that same aristocratic smile. "No, I don't think so. I'd rather go out on my terms." "You don't get terms," Celine said. She stepped forward, her pistol aimed at his head. "You don't get to choose, not after what you did." What I did was give you purpose, structure. I made you valuable. Without me, you were just another rich girl wasting her father's money. Without you, I'd be whole." "You were never whole. You were always broken. I just taught you to live with it." Celine's finger tightened on the trigger, every instinct screaming to shoot, to end this, to watch him die. But Kael's hand touched her shoulder, gentle, grounding. "Don't," he said quietly. "Not like this. Not with him in control. He doesn't get to escape. He won't. Lower your weapon, Lucien. There's nowhere to go. We've got the compound. Your guards are dead or gone. It's over." "Is it?" Lucien's smile widened. "You think this ends with me dead? You think killing me gives her closure?" He looked at Celine. "I'm in your head, darling. In your nightmares, in every moment of intimacy you try to have with him. You'll never be free of me. Never. Because I broke something in you that can't be fixed." "You're wrong." "Am I? Then pull the trigger. Prove me wrong. Kill me and feel nothing." Celine aimed, her hand steady, her breath steady, everything steady. But she couldn't pull the trigger. Because killing him like this, with him choosing it, controlling it, making it about him, that wasn't freedom. That was just another way of letting him win. She lowered her gun. "No," she said quietly. "You don't get the easy way out. You're going to prison. You're going to spend the rest of your life in a cell knowing that I beat you, that I survived you, that everything you built is gone, and I'm still standing." Lucien's smile faltered. "Torres," Kael said, "restrain him." Torres moved forward, reaching for Lucian's gun. That's when Lucian moved, fast, dropping the gun from his own head, swinging it towards Celine. If I can't have you... 3 shots rang out. Kael's, Diego's, Celine's. All 3 bullets hit Lucian within a second of each other. Center mass. Perfect grouping. Lucien staggered backward, hit the window. Glass cracked but didn't break. He looked down at his chest, at the blood spreading across his white shirt, at the life draining out of him. You... He coughed, blood on his lips. You were supposed to... He collapsed, slid down the window, leaving a red smear, hit the floor and didn't move. Silence filled the room, just breathing, hearts pounding, the ocean crashing outside. Celine stood there, gun still raised, staring at Lucian's body, at the blood, at the man who tortured her for 4 years finally dead. She waited to feel something. Relief, satisfaction, closure. But there was nothing. Just emptiness where the fear used to be. Celine, Kael said softly. She looked at him. Is it over? Yes, it's over. Why don't I feel different? Because killing him doesn't undo what he did, doesn't erase the memories. It just stops him from making new ones. Celine lowered her gun. Her hands were shaking now. Adrenaline crash hitting her all at once. Her legs gave out. Kael caught her, held her, let her cry into his chest while Torres and Diego secured the rest of the compound. Outside, the sun was starting to rise. First light bleeding across the Caribbean, dawn after the longest night. But for Celine, it wasn't dawn yet. Maybe wouldn't be for a long time. Because Lucien was right about one thing. He'd broken something in her that couldn't be fixed. The question now was whether she could build something new from the pieces. They burned the compound. It took 6 hours to wire the entire island with explosives, to make sure nothing remained. No evidence, no trace, no shrine to Lucien Varela's twisted empire. They'd wrapped his body in canvas, weighted it, dumped it in deep water 10 miles off the coast. No funeral, no marker. No legacy except the women he'd hurt and the empire Kael had destroyed. The helicopter lifted off just as the first charges detonated. Celine watched through the window as fire consumed the island, flames reaching toward the sky, smoke billowing black and thick. Everything Lucien had built, everything he'd been, all of it turning to ash. You okay? Kael asked. Celine nodded, but she wouldn't be for a long time. What happens now? She said. We go home, we rebuild, No. Celine turned to look at him. What happens to us? You and me. This marriage that started as a transaction, that became something else, that turned us both into killers. Kael was quiet for a moment, then, that's up to you. The contract I had with your father, it's void. He's dead, Lucien's dead, you're free, completely free. You can walk away, take the money, start over somewhere new. I won't stop you. And if I don't want to walk away, then we figure it out together. No more secrets, no more lies. Just 2 fucked up people trying to build something real out of the wreckage. Celine looked back at the burning island, at the smoke rising like a funeral pyre. I killed a man tonight, she said quietly, looked him in the eye and pulled the trigger. That changes you, makes you something different. I know. You've lived with that your whole life, the killing, the violence, the blood. How do you do it? How do you stay human? Kael took her hand. You find something worth being human for, something that makes the violence mean something. For me, it was my empire, my legacy. Now, he squeezed her hand. Now it's you. Celine squeezed back. I don't know if I can be worth that much. You already are. They flew back to the mainland in silence, landed at a private airfield in Florida where Kael had another plane waiting. Commercial flight would have raised too many questions, too much scrutiny. By the time they reached New York, it was midday. The city sprawled beneath them. Millions of people going about their lives. No idea that 2 people on a plane overhead had just committed murder in the Caribbean. The SUV was waiting at the private terminal. Torres drove them back to the penthouse while Diego handled cleanup, disposing of weapons, burning clothes, making sure nothing traced back to them. Celine hadn't spoken since they left the island, just stared out the window at the city passing by. at the normal people living normal lives, at the world she'd left behind when she married Kyle Serrano. They reached the penthouse, rode the elevator in silence, walked into the living room where everything looked exactly as they'd left it 36 hours ago. Like nothing had happened. Like they hadn't just killed a man. Celine walked to the window, looked out at the city, at her reflection in the glass, still in tactical gear, still carrying a gun, still covered in someone else's blood. "I need to shower," she said. "Okay." She didn't move, just stood there staring at her reflection, at the stranger looking back. "Celine, I thought it would feel different," she said. "Killing him. I thought I'd feel relief or satisfaction or something, but I just feel," her voice cracked, "I just feel empty. Like he took something from me even in death." Kyle came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her, rested his chin on her shoulder. "That's normal. The first kill always leaves you hollow, makes you question who you are, what you've become. Does it get easier? No, but you get better at living with it. I don't want to get better at living with murder. I don't want to become—" She stopped, looked at their reflection, at the crime lord and his broken bride. "I don't want to become you." The words hung in the air, sharp, cutting. Kale pulled back. "I know, and I don't want that for you either." "Then what do we do? How do we move forward when we're both killers, when our marriage is built on blood and violence and revenge? We choose, every day, to be better than what we've done, to build something that isn't about survival or violence or fear." "Like what?" "Like the foundation you wanted to build, for women like you, like Ivy. Give them a way out, a place to heal. Use the money I've made from violence to stop violence." Celine turned to face him. "You'd do that? Really commit to going legitimate?" "I was already planning to. The Serrano Empire has been transitioning for 5 years. Less weapons, more real estate, less drugs, more legitimate shipping. By next year, most of our operations will be clean." He touched her face. "I want to be someone you can be proud of. Someone who doesn't just destroy. Someone who builds." "I don't know if that's possible. To just walk away from what you've been. It's possible. It's just hard. But if you're with me, if we do it together, maybe it's easier." Celine studied his face, looking for lies, for manipulation, for the strategic chess player who'd bought her from her father. But all she saw was a man who'd killed for her, protected her, given her the tools to save herself. A man who was just as broken as she was. "Okay," she said, finally. "We try. But I need time, space to process what happened, what I did. I can't just move forward like nothing happened." "I understand. Take all the time you need. And no more secrets. If you're planning something, if you're making a move, I need to know. No more protecting me by keeping me in the dark." "Deal." "And therapy. We both need therapy. Real therapy. Not just each other trying to fix each other's trauma." Kale smiled. "That might be the sanest thing you've said all month." Celine almost smiled back. Almost. Then her phone rang. She'd replaced it after Lucian smashed it. New number. Only a handful of people had it. She answered. "Hello?" "Celine Serrano?" A woman's voice, professional, crisp. "Yes. This is Agent Sarah Chen with the FBI. I need you to come down to our field office. There are some questions about Lucien Varela's disappearance that we'd like to ask you." Celine's blood went cold. She looked at Kyle. He could hear the conversation. His expression went carefully blank. "What kind of questions?" Celine asked. "The kind that are better discussed in person. Can you come down today? Say 3 p.m.? I need to speak with my lawyer first." "Of course, bring your lawyer. And Mrs. Serrano, don't leave the city. We'll be in touch." The line went dead. Celine lowered the phone, looked at Kyle with something like panic in her eyes. "They know," she whispered. "They know we killed him. They suspect. There's a difference." "What do we do?" Kale pulled out his phone, started making calls. "We lawyer up. We get ahead of this. Another call came through, this time to Kyle's phone. He answered, listened. His face went dark. "When?" he said. Then, "How many?" Then, "Fuck. Okay, don't move, I'm coming." He hung up, looked at Celine. That was Diego. The FBI just raided 3 of my warehouses. They've got warrants. They're tearing everything apart. Oh, God. Someone talked. Someone gave them evidence, dates, locations, operations. They know too much. Who? Who would? I don't know. But whoever it is, they're inside, close, someone I trusted. Celine's mind raced. Lucien. Before he died, he said he had insurance. Said if anything happened to him, evidence would be released. Maybe. Cale was pacing now, thinking, planning. Or maybe someone saw an opportunity. Lucien's dead. His empire's gone. Maybe someone thought they could take over by taking me down first. What do we do? Kael stopped pacing, looked at her with something like resignation in his eyes. We fight, but Celine… He crossed to her, took her hands. This is going to get ugly. Federal investigation, possible charges. Media circus. Everything we did will be examined, every choice will be questioned, and you're going to be pulled into it, as my wife, as a witness, maybe as a suspect. I know. You can still walk away, file for divorce, claim you were coerced, manipulated. The FBI would probably protect you if you testified against me. Celine pulled her hands back. You want me to betray you? I want you to survive. And if that means no, her voice was iron. We did this together, killed him together. If there are consequences, we face them together. Celine, I'm not leaving, I'm not running, and I'm sure as hell not testifying against you. We're in this, all the way, until the end. Cale stared at her, then pulled her into a kiss, hard, desperate, the kiss of 2 people who knew they might not have much time left. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Celine rested her forehead against his. What's the plan? She asked. We call every lawyer we have. We get our stories straight. We prepare for war. Because the feds don't raid multiple locations without a case. They've got something. We just need to figure out what. And if we can't? If they have enough to prosecute? Then we do what we do best. Cale's smile was dark, dangerous. We fight like hell and take as many of them down with us as possible. Celine smiled back, just as dark, just as dangerous. Okay, let's go to war. Cool. The next 72 hours were a nightmare of lawyers, investigators, and federal agents. Cale and Celine spent hours being interviewed separately, answering the same questions over and over. Where were you on this date? Do you know this person? Can you explain these financial transactions? They stuck to their story. Cale was a legitimate businessman. Celine was a victim of abuse who'd married for protection. Lucien Varela had been harassing them both. They'd filed restraining orders. They had no idea where he'd gone. The FBI didn't believe them, but they couldn't prove otherwise. Until the 4th day. Agent Chen walked into the interview room where Celine sat with her lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia who cost $1,000 an hour and earned every penny. Chen dropped a folder on the table. We found Lucien Varela's body. Celine's heart stopped. Patricia's hand touched her arm. Warning, don't react. I'm sorry to hear that, Celine said carefully. How did he die? Multiple gunshot wounds, 9mm rounds, execution style. Chen opened the folder. Photographs spilled out. Lucien's body in the water, bloated, decomposing, but recognizable. That's awful, Celine said, her voice steady, her hands steady, everything steady, even though her world was crashing down. We also found residue, gunshot residue, on clothes in your apartment, and on your husband's clothes, and on clothes belonging to Diego Torres and Marcus Webb. I don't know anything about that. Don't you? Chen leaned forward. Mrs. Serrano, we know you were abused. We know what Lucien did to you. And honestly, part of me doesn't blame you for wanting him dead. Part of me thinks he deserved it. Agent Chen, Patricia warned, but murder is murder, and the law is the law. And right now I have enough evidence to charge you, your husband, and half his organization with first-degree murder. Celine said nothing, just stared at Chen with dead eyes, the same dead eyes she'd had on her wedding day. Unless, Chen continued, you want to make a deal. Tell us everything. How Kael operates, his businesses, his associates, his methods. Give us the Serrano Syndicate, and we'll talk about immunity, protection, a new life. Get out, Celine said quietly. Excuse me? Get out. We're done talking. If you're going to charge me, charge me. But I'm not betraying my husband. Even if it means spending the rest of your life in prison? Even then. Chen studied her for a long moment, then collected her photos, closed the folder, stood. You're making a mistake, she said. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. Chen left. Patricia turned to Celine immediately. They're going to charge you, today, maybe tonight. You need to prepare yourself for… I know, it's okay. It's not okay. You're looking at life in prison, possibly death penalty if they can prove premeditation. I know. Then why won't you take the deal? You could walk away from this, start over, be free. Celine looked at her lawyer with something like pity. Because I'm already free. For the first time in my life, I made my own choice. Did something because I wanted to, not because someone forced me. And if the price for that freedom is prison, she shrugged, then I'll pay it. Patricia shook her head. You're crazy. Both of you. Crazy and in love, and it's going to get you both killed. Probably. But at least we'll die free. They arrested KL first. Federal agents storming the penthouse at dawn, guns drawn, warrants for his arrest on charges of murder, conspiracy, racketeering, and about 20 other counts. He didn't fight. Just let them cuff him, let them read him his rights, let them drag him out while news helicopters circled overhead. They came for Celine 2 hours later. Same charges, same theatrics, same media circus. They were taken to separate facilities, kept apart. The FBI's strategy was obvious. Isolate them, break them, make them turn on each other. It wouldn't work. But they didn't know that yet. Celine sat in her cell, 8 by 10 feet, concrete walls, metal toilet, thin mattress that smelled like despair, and thought about how she'd ended up here. 4 months ago, she'd been a prisoner in Lucien's apartment, beaten, broken, waiting for someone to save her. Now she was a prisoner in federal custody, facing murder charges, waiting for… what? Freedom? Redemption? Justice? None of those things existed anymore, and not for her. But she'd made her choice. Killed her monster. Stood beside the man who'd helped her do it. And if that meant dying in prison, then at least she'd die knowing she'd fought back. At least she'd die knowing she wasn't a victim anymore. The door opened. Patricia walked in, looking grim. They've set bail at 50 million, she said. Each. Kyle can probably make it, but you… Don't. Celine held up a hand. Don't post bail. I'm staying. What? Why? Because if I run, they'll use it against me. They'll say I'm a flight risk, that I knew I was guilty. Better to stay. Face it head on. Celine, that's crazy. I know. You keep saying that. Patricia sighed. The trial starts in 3 months. I need you to tell me everything. Every detail. Every moment. So I can build a defense. No defense. I did it. We did it. I'm not denying that. Then we plead self-defense. Claim you were afraid for your life, that Lucien was going to kill you, and no lies, no strategies. I killed him because he deserved to die. That's the truth. That's what I'll say in court. That's suicide. Maybe, but it's honest. Patricia gathered her papers, stood. I'll see what I can do. But Celine, she looked back. If you're determined to go down for this, at least let me try to keep you alive. Let me fight for you even if you won't fight for yourself. Okay, fight, but don't expect me to lie to save myself. Patricia left. The door clanged shut. Celine lay back on the thin mattress, stared at the ceiling, at the fluorescent lights that never turned off, at the future stretching ahead of her, court dates and sentencing, and years in a cage barely bigger than this cell. But she didn't regret it, didn't regret pulling that trigger, didn't regret watching Lucien die. Because for the first time in 4 years, she'd taken control of her own life. And that was worth any price, even this one. End part 4. Lucien is dead. The island is ash. But the law has teeth too. Federal investigation. Murder charges. A trial that will tear apart everything Celine and Kyle built. They've won the war but lost the peace. And somewhere in separate cells, they're both wondering the same thing. Was killing the monster worth becoming one yourself? The final verdict is coming. And this time, no amount of money or violence or love will change the outcome. Only truth matters now. and the truth is written in blood. The trial started on a Tuesday morning in late November. Cold rain hammering against the courthouse windows. Media circus outside. Cameras, reporters, protesters holding signs that read everything from "Justice for Victims" to "Free Celine Serrano" to lock them both up. Inside, the courtroom smelled like old wood and nervous sweat. Celine sat at the defense table in a navy suit that Patricia had chosen. Conservative, professional, the kind of outfit that said "respectable woman" instead of "killer." Her hair was pulled back. No makeup except what was needed to look human after 3 months in a cell. Kyle sat at a separate table with his own legal team. They weren't allowed to sit together, weren't allowed to speak. The prosecution had argued they'd coordinate stories, intimidate witnesses, conspire. But when Celine walked in that first morning, Kyle's eyes found hers across the courtroom. And in that look was everything they couldn't say out loud. "I'm here. I'm with you. Whatever happens, we're in this together." Celine nodded once, then sat down and prepared to fight for her life. The prosecution's case was brutal and methodical. Assistant U.S. Attorney James Morrison was 45, silver-haired, with the kind of presence that made juries lean forward and listen. He laid out the timeline with surgical precision. Lucienne Varela's abuse, the marriage arrangement, the systematic destruction of Lucien's empire, the trip to the island, the shooting, the body dumped in the ocean. He had forensics, ballistics matching the bullets to guns registered to Kael's security team, gunshot residue on clothing, financial records showing payments to Diego and Torres, satellite data tracking the helicopter. He had witnesses. The young guard who'd run from the compound testified about seeing armed intruders. A fisherman who'd seen the helicopter flying low over water at dawn. A forensic pathologist who confirmed cause of death. 3 gunshot wounds, any one of which would have been fatal. And he had motive, years of documented abuse, restraining orders that had been filed and ignored, a marriage that gave Celine access to resources and protection. This wasn't self-defense, Morrison told the jury during his opening statement. This was premeditated murder, a hunt, an execution, and no matter how sympathetic we are to Mrs. Serrano's past suffering, we cannot allow victims to become vigilantes. We cannot allow private citizens to bypass the justice system and take the law into their own hands. He paused. Let that sink in. Lucien Varela was a monster. I won't dispute that. But he was an American citizen entitled to due process. And these defendants denied him that right. They became judge, jury, and executioner. And for that, they must be held accountable. The jury, 8 women, 4 men, diverse in age and background, listened with careful attention. Some looked at Celine with sympathy, some with suspicion, all with the weight of deciding whether justice meant prison or freedom. Patricia stood for the defense. She was smaller than Morrison, younger, but she had a fire in her eyes that came from fighting lost causes and winning anyway. The prosecution wants you to believe this is a simple case, she said. Murder, premeditation, guilt. But nothing about this case is simple. Nothing about what my client endured for 4 years is simple. And nothing about the choice she faced that night is simple. She walked to the jury box, looked each of them in the eye. Celine Vale, now Serrano, was tortured for 4 years by Lucien Varela, beaten, raped, controlled, isolated from everyone who might have helped her. She tried to leave. He threatened to kill her. She tried to get help. He paid off police, judges, lawyers. She tried to survive. And every day she wondered if this would be the day he finally killed her. Patricia's voice dropped. Got quieter, more intense. When she finally escaped by marrying Kael Serrano, Lucien didn't stop. He stalked her, threatened her, killed her father as a message. And when the justice system released him on bail despite overwhelming evidence of his crimes, she realized the truth. The law couldn't protect her. The courts couldn't save her. She had 2 choices: spend the rest of her life running and hiding or end the threat permanently. She turned to face Morrison. The prosecution calls that murder. I call it survival. And I'm asking you, all of you, to remember that sometimes the law fails, sometimes the system breaks, and sometimes the only person who can save you is yourself. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Thanksgiving came and went. Christmas approached. Outside, the city decorated for the holidays. Inside the courthouse, 2 lives hung in the balance. The prosecution paraded witnesses. Federal agents who'd investigated the Serrano syndicate, forensic experts who matched bullets to bodies, financial analysts who tracked money from Kael's accounts to offshore banks. They called Ivy Mercer to the stand. She testified about Lucien's abuse, about the years of violence, about trying to press charges and having her case dismissed. "Did you ever wish Lucien Varela dead?" Morrison asked. Ivy looked at Celine, then at the jury. "Every single day. Did you ever consider killing him yourself?" Long pause, then, "Yes." "But you didn't. Why not?" "Because I believed in the justice system. I believed that if I just documented everything, if I just gathered enough evidence, eventually someone would listen. Eventually someone would stop him." "And were you right?" Ivy's eyes filled with tears. "No, I wasn't right. The system failed me, just like it failed Celine." Morrison turned to the judge. No further questions. Patricia stood for cross-examination, but she didn't attack Ivy, didn't question her credibility, just asked one question. "If you'd known then what you know now, that the system would fail, that Lucien would keep hurting people, that he'd never face consequences, would you have done what Celine did?" Morrison shot to his feet. "Objection! Calls for speculation. Irrelevant. Your Honor, it goes to the heart of the defense, whether a reasonable person in my client's position would have acted the same way." The judge considered. "I'll allow it, but be careful, Ms. Webb." Patricia looked at Ivy. "Would you have killed him if you'd known the truth?" Ivy's hands were shaking. She looked at the judge, at Morrison, at the jury. Then she looked at Celine and said two words that changed everything. "Fuck yes." The courtroom erupted, judge banging his gavel, Morrison shouting objections, reporters scribbling frantically, and Celine. Celine felt something crack inside her chest, not breaking, opening, like a window letting in light after years of darkness. She wasn't alone. Wasn't the only one who'd felt this rage. Wasn't the only one who'd wanted the monster dead. She was just the only one brave enough, or broken enough, to do it. Okay. They put Celine on the stand in the fourth week. Patricia had warned her, "Don't do it, it's too risky. Morrison will destroy you." But Celine insisted. She needed to tell her story, needed to look the jury in the eye and make them understand. She wore a simple dress. No jewelry, no makeup, just herself. Scars and all. Patricia led her through the timeline, the gambling debts, the sale to Lucien, the first time he hit her, the years that followed. "Tell the jury about the worst day," Patricia said gently. Celine took a breath. There wasn't one worse day. That's what people don't understand. It wasn't one big traumatic event. It was 4 years of constant fear, constant pain, never knowing when he'd snap, never knowing if today was the day he'd kill me. "Can you describe a specific incident?" 6 months before I married Kael, Lucien broke 3 of my ribs because I smiled at a waiter. Not flirted. Smiled. Said thank you when the waiter brought water. Lucien saw it as disrespect, as me trying to attract attention from other men. Her voice was steady, flat. The way you talk about trauma when you've processed it so many times the emotion is worn away. He took me home. Beat me until I couldn't breathe. Then he called a private doctor who treated me without filing a report. Paid him $50,000 for silence. "Why didn't you go to the police?" "I tried. Once. 2 years in. Went to a police station with bruises all over my face. The officer took my statement. Said they'd investigate. 2 days later I got a call from Lucien's lawyer. The officer had been reassigned. My statement had disappeared. And Lucien," her voice cracked. "Lucien beat me so badly that night I almost died. Said if I ever tried to get help again, he'd kill me. And I believed him." Patricia let that hang in the air. Let the jury see the truth written on Celine's face. "What changed? Why did you fight back after so many years?" "I married someone who taught me I didn't have to be a victim, who gave me the tools to defend myself, who made me believe that maybe I was worth saving." She looked at Kael. He was watching her with something raw and unguarded in his eyes. "And when Lucien killed my father, when he made it clear he'd never stop hunting me, I realized something. The law couldn't save me. Restraining orders couldn't save me. Even marriage to the most dangerous man in the city couldn't save me. The only person who could save me was me." "So you killed him?" Yes. With your husband's help? Yes. Do you regret it? Celine looked at the jury, at 12 strangers who would decide her fate. No. I regret that I had to do it. I regret that the system failed me so completely that murder was my only option, but do I regret that Lucien Varela is dead? That he can't hurt anyone else? That women like Ivy can sleep at night knowing he's gone? She shook her head. No, I don't regret that. Patricia sat down. Morrison stood up, and for the next 3 hours he tried to break her. He asked about the contract with her father, about the money, about whether she'd married Kael for protection or wealth. He asked about the training, the shooting lessons, the self-defense classes. He asked about the planning, the helicopter, the weapons, the coordination. This wasn't survival, he said. This was premeditated murder. You spent weeks planning how to kill Lucien Varela. I spent weeks planning how to survive. By hunting him down and executing him. By stopping a threat that no one else would stop. You could have left the country, started over somewhere he couldn't find you. I tried that. He found me anyway. He always found me. You could have gone into witness protection and lived the rest of my life in hiding, looking over my shoulder, waiting for the day he bribed the right person and found me anyway. Celine leaned forward. I was already in prison. Lucien was my prison. Death was just changing the walls. So you decided to become judge and executioner? I decided to be free. Morrison changed tactics, started asking about Kael, about the Serrano syndicate, about whether she knew about the illegal businesses, whether she benefited from criminal money. Patricia objected repeatedly. The judge sustained most of them. But Morrison had made his point. Celine had married into organized crime, had access to resources regular victims didn't have, had used those resources to commit murder. By the time he finished, Celine was exhausted, wrung out. But she'd told her truth, and that was all she could do. The judge called a recess. Celine was led back to holding. She sat in the small room, hands shaking, replaying every word she'd said, every answer that might have been wrong. The door opened. She expected Patricia. It was Kael. They'd arranged 5 minutes through some legal loophole Patricia had found. 5 minutes for spouses to speak before the verdict. Celine stood, crossed to him. And for the first time in 3 months, they touched. His hands cupped her face. Her hands gripped his jacket. They stood there, foreheads pressed together, breathing each other in. I'm sorry, Kael whispered, for all of this, for dragging you into my world, for making you into... Don't apologize for saving me. I didn't save you. You saved yourself, with your help, with your protection, with your love. She pulled back just enough to look at him. And if this is the price, if we both go to prison for the rest of our lives, it was worth it, because I got to be free, even if just for a little while. Kael's eyes were wet. I love you. I don't think I've ever said that, but I love you more than my empire, more than my life, more than anything. I love you too. And I'm not sorry for what we did. I'm only sorry we got caught. They both smiled, dark humor, the kind that comes from staring into the abyss and finding something funny in the darkness. A knock on the door. Time was up. They kissed. One last time. Tasting like salt and desperation and promises they might not get to keep. Then he was gone, and Celine was alone again. Closing arguments happened on a Friday. The courtroom was packed. Media, victim advocates, crime analysts, everyone who'd followed the trial for 6 weeks, waiting to see how it ended. Morrison went first. He was good, painting Celine and Kael as vigilantes who'd bypassed the justice system, who'd used wealth and connections to commit murder and cover it up, who deserved to be punished no matter how sympathetic their story was. We all feel for Mrs. Serrano, he said, but sympathy doesn't equal innocence, and abuse doesn't justify murder. If we allow this, if we let victims take justice into their own hands, we don't have a society. We have chaos. We have mob rule. We have vigilantes deciding who lives and who dies based on their personal grievances. He paused. Let that sink in. Lucien Varela was a monster, but he was an American citizen, and he deserved a trial. He deserved due process. These defendants denied him that right, and for that, They must be held accountable. Not because we don't care about abuse victims, but because we care about the rule of law. Patricia stood for the defense. She looked tired. 6 weeks of fighting uphill had worn on her, but her voice was strong when she spoke. The prosecution wants you to believe in a perfect world, she said. A world where the justice system works. Where abuse victims can just call the police and be protected. Where restraining orders mean something. Where wealthy abusers face consequences. She turned to the jury. But we don't live in that world. We live in this one. Where Ivy Mercer tried to press charges and had her case dismissed. Where Celine Vale called the police and her statement disappeared. Where Lucien Varela paid his way out of trouble for years while women suffered. Her voice got harder, more intense. The prosecution talks about due process, about the rule of law. But where was due process when Lucien beat Celine for 4 years? Where was the rule of law when he killed her father? Where was the justice system when he walked out on bail despite overwhelming evidence? She crossed to Morrison's table, looked him in the eye. You want to punish my client for surviving, for fighting back when no one else would fight for her. But I'm asking this jury to remember something simple. The law is supposed to protect people. And when it fails, when it leaves victims to die, we can't blame them for protecting themselves. She turned back to the jury. Celine Serrano is not a criminal. She's a survivor. And if you convict her, you're telling every abuse victim in this country that they don't matter, that their suffering doesn't count, that they should just accept their fate and hope the system eventually decides to care. Patricia's voice dropped, got quieter, more urgent. Don't send that message. Don't tell Celine, don't tell any victim that survival is a crime. Look at the evidence. Look at what she endured and ask yourself one simple question. What would you have done? She sat down. Silence filled the courtroom. Then the judge gave the jury their instructions, explained the charges, the burden of proof, the definitions of murder, manslaughter, self-defense. The jury filed out, the doors closed, and Celine sat at the defense table, hands folded, waiting for 12 strangers to decide if she'd spend the rest of her life in a cage. The jury deliberated for 4 days. 4 days of waiting, of pacing, of lying awake in her cell at night replaying every moment of testimony. On Tuesday afternoon, word came. The jury had reached a verdict. Celine was brought to the courthouse. Kael was brought separately. They sat at their respective tables, not looking at each other, both feeling the weight of what was about to happen. The jury filed in. None of them looked at Celine or Kael. That was supposed to be a bad sign. Juries that were about to acquit usually looked at the defendants, made eye contact, showed sympathy. These jurors looked at the floor. Celine's heart sank. This was it. She was going to prison, probably for life. And Kael would die in a cage somewhere, growing old without ever touching her again. The judge spoke. Has the jury reached a verdict? The foreman, a middle-aged woman with gray hair and kind eyes, stood. We have, Your Honor. On the charge of murder in the first degree, how do you find the defendant, Celine Serrano? Time slowed. Celine's heartbeat was deafening in her ears. She could hear Patricia breathing beside her, could feel Kael's presence across the room. The foreman looked at the judge, then at Celine, and something in her expression softened. Not guilty. The courtroom exploded, gasps, shouts, Morrison slamming his hand on the table, judge banging his gavel for order. Not guilty, the judge repeated. On all counts? Yes, Your Honor, not guilty on all counts. Celine couldn't breathe, couldn't process what she was hearing. Not guilty. She was free? And on the charge of murder in the first degree, how do you find the defendant, Kael Serrano? The foreman looked at Kael. Her expression shifted, became harder. Guilty. The word hit like a bullet. Guilty. Kael was guilty. But Celine was free. The jury had split them, found that Celine had acted in self-defense, in survival, but that Kael, with his resources and power, had crossed the line into premeditated murder. Celine turned to look at him. Kael was staring straight ahead, face blank, processing. Then he looked at her and smiled. A real smile. Relieved, grateful. She was free. That was all that mattered to him. She was free. The judge was talking, setting a sentencing date for Kael, dismissing the charges against Celine, thanking the jury. But Selene wasn't listening. She was staring at Kyle, understanding what this meant. He'd go to prison, probably for life. They'd take him away, lock him in a cage, and she'd be free to live, free to rebuild, free to do all the things they talked about without him. Patricia was hugging her, saying congratulations, saying they'd won, but it didn't feel like winning. It felt like losing the one person who'd ever really seen her. Boite. They gave her 10 minutes with Kyle before they took him to holding. 10 minutes in a conference room with a guard standing outside the door. Selene didn't waste time. She crossed to him, wrapped her arms around him, held on like he was the only solid thing in a world that wouldn't stop spinning. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be. This is exactly what I wanted. You wanted to go to prison? I wanted you free, safe, alive. And now you are." He pulled back to look at her. "Promise me something. Anything. Build the foundation. Help other women. Use my money, our money, to make sure no one else has to go through what you did. Kyle, promise me. Because I need to know that something good came from all this, that I didn't just destroy everything I touched." Celine's eyes filled with tears. "You didn't destroy me. You saved me." "Then prove it. Live. Really live. Not just survive. Actually be happy." "How can I be happy when you're in prison?" "Because one of us should be, and it might as well be you." The guard knocked. Time was almost up. "I'll wait for you," Selene said. "However long it takes. I'll wait." "Don't. I'm looking at life without parole. I'll die in there. And I don't want you wasting your life waiting for something that won't happen." "I'm not wasting anything. I'm choosing you, choosing us, even if it's just letters and visits and—" Selene, Kyle cupped her face. "I need you to let me go, need you to move forward, because if you don't, if you spend the rest of your life chained to a ghost, then Lucien wins. He takes away your future just like he took away your past. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, but it's still worth living." The door opened. 2 marshals waited to take him away. Kale kissed her, long, deep, the kind of kiss that says goodbye and I love you and thank you for everything all at once. When he pulled away, Celine's face was wet with tears. "I love you," she said. "I love you too. Now go. Live. Be free. And when you think of me, don't think of this moment. Think of the penthouse. Think of teaching you to shoot. Think of the island. Think of us fighting side by side." "I will. I promise." The marshals took his arms, led him toward the door. Selene watched him go. Watched the man who'd saved her walk into darkness so she could walk into light, and understood finally what real love looked like. It looked like sacrifice, like letting go, like burning your own future so someone else could have one. 5 years later, on a warm spring morning, Selene Serrano stood in front of a building in Brooklyn and looked up at the sign over the door. The Aurelia Initiative. Hope. Healing. Home. It had taken 3 years to build, 2 years to staff and certify, and now it was real. 50 beds, round-the-clock counseling, legal aid, job training, medical care, everything a woman escaping violence needed to rebuild her life. The first shelter had opened in Manhattan, then one in Queens, then the Bronx, now Brooklyn. By year-end, there'd be one in every borough. And after that, Philadelphia, Boston, Chicago, Los Angeles. A nationwide network funded by the remains of the Serrano Empire. Clean money now. Legitimate businesses that Kyle had been transitioning before his arrest. All of it going toward making sure women like Selene never had to choose between death and survival again. Ivy Mercer walked out of the building, smiling. She was the director here, had been working with Selene since the beginning, building something beautiful from their shared trauma. "Ready?" Ivy asked. "Yeah, let's do this." They walked inside together, past the intake desk where volunteers greeted frightened women with kindness instead of judgment, past the common areas where survivors sat together, sharing stories, building community, past the bedrooms where women could sleep without fear for the first time in years. They reached the conference room where a dozen women waited. New intakes, fresh faces carrying old pain. Selene stood at the front of the room and looked at them, Saw herself 5 years ago. Saw Ivy. Saw every woman who'd ever been told she was nothing, who'd ever been broken by men who thought power gave them the right to hurt. "My name is Celine," she said, "and 5 years ago I killed the man who tortured me for 4 years. The women stared, some shocked, some understanding. "I'm not telling you that to glorify violence. I'm telling you so you understand that I know. I know what it's like to be trapped, to be broken, to think there's no way out except death." She took a breath. "But there is another way. There's this. There's safety. There's healing. There's building a new life from the ashes of the old one. It won't be easy. Some days you'll want to give up. Some days you'll think the pain isn't worth surviving." She looked at each of them in turn. "But it is. I promise you it's worth it, because you are worth it, and no one has the right to tell you otherwise." After the meeting, after the women had been shown to their rooms and given their first real meal in who knew how long, Celine stood at the window and looked out at the city. Her city now. Not Kael's, not Lucien's. Hers. Her phone buzzed. A text from Patricia, who now worked as the legal director for the initiative. Kael's appeal was denied. "He's staying in." "I'm sorry." Celine stared at the message for a long time. She'd known this was coming. 5th appeal in 5 years, each one denied. The evidence was too strong, the jury verdict too clear. Kael would die in prison, and Celine would live free. That had been the deal, the sacrifice, the price of survival. She drove to the prison that afternoon. 3-hour trip upstate to a maximum security facility that looked like something out of a nightmare. But she made the drive every month, had for 5 years, would for as long as he was alive. The visiting room was exactly what you'd expect. Plastic chairs, bolted tables, phones separated by plexiglass, other prisoners visiting with their families, children who barely remembered their fathers, wives growing old waiting for men who'd never come home. Kael walked in wearing orange scrubs. He'd aged, gray in his hair now, lines around his eyes, but he still moved like a predator, still had that presence that made weak men nervous. He picked up the phone. Celine picked up hers. "Hey," he said. "Hey yourself. How's the Brooklyn site?" "Perfect. We're at capacity already. Got a waiting list a mile long." "That's good. That's..." He smiled. "I'm proud of you. What you've built. Who you've become. I couldn't have done it without you." "Yeah, you could. You were always stronger than you thought." They talked for an hour about the initiative, about her testimony to Congress about domestic violence reform, about the book she was writing, about everything except the appeal denial they both knew about. Finally, near the end of visiting hours, Celine said it. "They denied the appeal." Kael nodded. "I know. My lawyer called this morning." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I did what I did. I knew the risks, and I'd do it again, every time, because you're here, free, living, and that's all I ever wanted. I miss you." "I miss you too." "But Celine..." He leaned closer to the glass. "You need to move on, really move on. Not just build shelters and save other women. Build a life. Find someone. Be happy." "I am happy." "You're busy. There's a difference." Celine's throat tightened. "I don't know how to be happy without you. Learn. Because I'm not coming back. We both know that. And I need you to live for both of us. I need you to..." His voice cracked. He looked away, composed himself. "I need you to be the person I thought I was saving, not the ghost haunting a life she's too scared to live. That's not fair. None of this is fair, but it's real, and you need to face it." The guard called time. Visiting hours were over. Celine pressed her hand against the glass. Kael pressed his hand on the other side, as close as they could get to touching through the barrier that would separate them forever. "I love you," she said. "I love you too. Now go, live, and don't come back here." "What? Kael?" "I mean it. Don't visit again. It's too hard for both of us. We need to let go, really let go." "I can't." "You can. You have to. Because holding on to this, onto me, it's just another cage. And I didn't sacrifice everything so you could build a new prison around yourself." Tears were streaming down Celine's face. "Please don't do this." I'm sorry, but it's time. He stood, hung up the phone, looked at her one last time with all the love and pain and sacrifice written in his eyes. Then he turned and walked away. And Selene sat there, phone pressed to her ear, listening to dead air, and felt her heart break and heal at the same time. Check. 10 years after Lucien Varela died on a private island in the Caribbean, Selene Serrano stood on a stage in Washington, D.C. and accepted an award for her work with domestic violence survivors. The Aurelia Initiative, now operated in 37 states, had helped over 10,000 women escape violent situations, had lobbied for stronger domestic violence laws, had trained law enforcement on trauma-informed responses. And Selene had become something she never imagined, an advocate, a voice, a symbol of survival and strength. She gave her acceptance speech to a packed ballroom, politicians, activists, survivors, all of them listening as she told her story. Not all of it. The murder conviction had been sealed, the details classified. But enough. Enough for people to understand what she'd survived, what she'd overcome. Trauma doesn't define you, she said into the microphone. But it does change you. It makes you harder, sharper, more aware of the darkness in the world. And you have a choice. Let that darkness consume you or use it to light the way for others. She looked out at the audience, at the survivors in the front rows who wore their scars like armor. I chose light, not because it was easy, but because someone once told me that living well is the best revenge, that surviving isn't enough. You have to actually live. And so that's what I do every day. I live loudly, fiercely, unapologetically, and I help other women do the same. The applause was deafening. After the ceremony, Selene stood outside the hotel, breathing in cool night air. A car pulled up. Her assistant got out. Ready to go? Yeah, I'm ready. They drove to the airport. Selene had a flight back to New York, had a meeting with donors in the morning, had a new shelter opening next week. But first, she had one more stop. She'd made it every year for the past 10 years, on this date, at this time. The cemetery was quiet at night, just shadows and headstones and the weight of memory. Selene walked through rows of graves until she found the one she was looking for. Simple headstone, black granite, just a name and dates. Marcus Vale, 1962 to 2026. Beloved father. The last part was a lie. He hadn't been beloved, hadn't even been a decent father. But Selene had paid for the stone anyway, had buried him properly, had forgiven him, not because he deserved it, but because carrying hate was too heavy. She stood there for a moment, thinking about the man who'd sold her, who'd chosen money over his daughter, who'd died because of choices he'd made. I survived, she told the headstone. Despite you, despite Lucien, despite everything, I survived. Then she walked away, back to her car, back to her life, back to the work that gave her purpose. She didn't go to Kael's prison anymore. Hadn't for 8 years. It had been the hardest thing she'd ever done, letting him go. But he'd been right. Holding on was just another cage. Instead, she lived, fully, completely, building something beautiful from the ashes of trauma. And sometimes, late at night when she couldn't sleep, she thought about him, about the man who'd killed for her, saved her, sacrificed everything so she could be free. She'd never stopped loving him, probably never would, but she'd learned to love herself more. And that was the real victory. Not killing Lucien, not surviving the trial, not even building the initiative. The real victory was waking up every morning and choosing to live instead of just survive. Was looking in the mirror and seeing a survivor instead of a victim. Was using her pain to prevent someone else's. Was taking the broken pieces Lucien had made and reforging them into something sharp and beautiful and dangerous in the best possible way. 15 years after her wedding day, Selene Serrano stood in front of a new shelter in Los Angeles and cut the ribbon while cameras flashed and survivors cheered. This building was different, bigger, better. Funded partially by a private donation from an anonymous source. The money had come with a note. For the woman who taught me that broken things can heal, love always. K. Selene had cried when she read it, had found out later that Kael had sold the last of his legitimate holdings, had donated every penny to the initiative, had left himself with nothing except the knowledge that he'd helped build something good. He died 3 months later. Heart attack in prison. Quick. Painless. Alone except for the guard who found him. The prison called Celine. Told her she was listed as next of kin. Asked what she wanted to do with the body. She brought him home. Buried him in a private cemetery outside the city. Simple service. Just her, Torres, Diego, Ivy, Patricia. The people who'd known him, who'd seen past the monster to the man underneath. They stood around the grave while rain fell and Celine read from a letter Kyle had written years ago. Instructions for his death, words he wanted spoken. I was not a good man. I killed for money, for power, for revenge. I built an empire on violence and fear. And I don't regret most of it because that empire gave me the resources to save the one person who mattered. Celine, if you're reading this, I'm gone. And I need you to know that every choice I made, every law I broke, every line I crossed, it was worth it. Because you're alive. You're free. You're building something beautiful. Don't mourn me. Don't waste tears on a killer who got what he deserved. Instead, remember the good we did at the end. Remember that we took something ugly and made it matter. Live loudly, love fiercely, and know that wherever I am, I'm proud of you. Always, K. Celine folded the letter, tucked it in her pocket, stood at the grave while others filtered away. She stayed until dark, until rain turned to mist, until she was alone with the man who'd changed everything. Thank you, she whispered, for seeing me when I was invisible, for fighting for me when everyone else walked away, for loving me enough to let me go. She placed a single white rose on the grave, turned and walked away, and she didn't look back. Because that's what survivors do. They keep moving forward, one step at a time, one day at a time, building something beautiful from the wreckage. Tatak. 20 years after a rain-soaked wedding in a cathedral, Celine Serrano stood on a beach and watched the sun set over the Pacific. She was 50 now, gray threading through her dark hair, lines around her eyes from years of smiling, scars that had faded but never quite disappeared. Behind her, the Aurelia Initiative's annual conference was winding down. 500 survivors gathered from across the country, sharing stories, building community, proving that trauma doesn't have to be the end. A young woman approached, maybe 25. Bruises barely hidden under makeup. That look in her eyes, the hollow fear Celine recognized instantly. Excuse me, the woman said quietly. Are you Celine Serrano? I am. I heard your speech about surviving, about fighting back, and I wanted to ask, her voice cracked, how do you do it? How do you keep going when everything hurts? Celine looked at this young woman, saw herself 20 years ago, broken, desperate, certain there was no way out. One breath at a time, she said, one choice at a time. You wake up and you decide, today, I survive. Tomorrow, maybe I do more than survive. Maybe I live. And the day after that, maybe I help someone else survive. But what if the person hurting you is too powerful, too connected? What if the law can't stop them? Celine thought about Lucian, about the island, about the choice she'd made to pull that trigger. Then you find another way, she said carefully. A legal way. You document everything. You find allies. You build a case so airtight that power and money can't save them. And if that doesn't work, then you run. You disappear. You build a new life somewhere they can't find you. I don't want to run. I want to fight. Celine studied the woman's eyes, saw that same fire she'd once carried, that same rage that could either destroy you or forge you into something unbreakable. Then fight, she said, but fight smart. Use the law. Use organizations like mine. Use everything available before you consider... She stopped, chose her words carefully. Before you cross lines you can't uncross. What if those lines are the only way to survive? Celine was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out a business card, wrote her personal number on the back. Call me, tomorrow. We'll talk, and I'll help you find a way that doesn't cost you everything. The woman took the card, looked at it like it was a lifeline. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you're standing on a beach 20 years from now, free and whole, and helping some other scared woman find her way. The woman smiled, small, fragile, but real. She walked away. And Celine watched her go, hoping, praying to nothing and everything at once, that this woman would choose a different path, a better path, a path that didn't end with blood on her hands and a life divided between before and after. But if she didn't, if the system failed her the way it had failed Celine, then at least she'd have someone who understood, someone who'd walked that dark road and survived. The sun dipped below the horizon, gold and orange and red bleeding across the sky like a wound healing. Celine closed her eyes, felt the ocean breeze on her face, felt the weight of 20 years of survival and sacrifice and building something that mattered. And she thought about Kael, about Lucien, about her father, about every person who'd shaped her into what she'd become. She thought about the scared girl in the wedding dress who'd whispered 6 words that started a war. She thought about the woman who'd pulled a trigger and ended that war. And she thought about who she was now, not a victim, not a killer, not defined by trauma or violence or the men who'd tried to break her. Just Celine, survivor, advocate, builder of hope, whole. Finally, after everything, whole. The stars began to emerge overhead, one by one, light piercing darkness, the same way it always had, the same way it always would. And Celine Serrano stood on that beach, alive and free and fighting for others, and understood that this was what victory looked like. Not revenge, not justice in the traditional sense, just survival that became living, pain that became purpose, darkness that became light. And sometimes that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.